host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, and happy election night. We have quite a bit to get into for tonight's show. But first and foremost, welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I do want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. It's finally here, election night. We are going to kick things off with our special guest because we do have news stories to cover before the polls close. So I want to show you what we are discussing tonight. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have probably already heard the big news here about Dick Cheney. But nevertheless, let's keep plugging on. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we are going to give you live election night coverage. The polls close at 9 p.m. We will also have multiple guests coming through for election night to talk about that. We have someone coming from New Jersey. We have a couple of New Yorkers that are going to be stopping through. And then we also have my comrade here, JB Fawn, is going to hop on as well. So looking forward to that. We're also going to discuss, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Dick Cheney has died. Dick Cheney has died. We're going to get into that story, and we're going to talk about who Dick Cheney really was. If you haven't heard about this as well, there is trouble in MAGA land. Apparently, Ben Shapiro is coming after Tucker Carlson very heavily here. And Tucker Carlson has responded. We're going to get into that whole divide that's happening there. We have a special guest that is coming on to discuss the genocide in Sudan. I know a lot of you have been asking about that. He's going to come on and break that down. And last but not least, the story that just came out about the Palestinian detainee that was abused, Benjamin Netanyahu is admitting guilt, but of course, those IDF soldiers that committed that act are not being held accountable. We're going to get into all of that, and I'm going to tell you who they decided to punish instead of those soldiers. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. His name is Mossab. He is a journalist, and he is going to break down what is happening in Sudan. Let's go ahead and bring him in. What's going on, Mossab?
Hey, Sabrina. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining. This has probably been one of the most requested topics from viewers that watch the show. They do want someone to explain what exactly is happening in Sudan and if the U.S. is involved. So I want to start with this article here. For those who are not aware, this was reported recently that there was blood visible from space in Sudan. It says it shows evidence of the Darfur genocide. Now, I know, Mossab, you don't want to get too much into this. But it does point back to the genocide that is happening in Sudan. If you could please, first and foremost, explain to us, how did all of this begin?
So thank you for having me on, Sabrina. This basically started decades ago. I mean, the Sudan government for a long time, if you go back to the 70s, it was, it was kind of coerced into joining the U.S. policy in the region. So it was used kind of as a weapon against Libya, against Chad, against Ethiopia, all at the time who had pretty much, sovereign governments. They had their own internal problems. But essentially, Sudan was brought into that neoliberal fold. The government kind of did a U-turn in the 90s, and they, claimed sovereignty, and they didn't want to follow the U.S. policy anymore, but they went in a very extreme direction of kind of, supporting militant Islamist groups and, hosting bin Laden and all that kind of stuff. And that got them on the radar for regime change. In the late 90s, the late Dick Cheney and his friends, the neocons, they put Sudan on the list of, 7 countries to be toppled in 5 years. So it was on that list along with Iran and Syria and Libya and Iraq. But they kind of compromised with the US and they let South Sudan separate to become its own country. So after that, then, the Arab Spring came along, Bashir got pretty shook by it. And he decided to go fully into the fold of the Gulf Arab countries and kind of under the fold of the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Egypt. The main thing that brings these countries together is that these are the countries that are allies of the US. And they're the ones that have a good relationship with Israel. They might not, outright have a lot of diplomatic relationships with Israel and everything, but that changed in 2020 with the Abraham Accords. But the struggle inside of Sudan has always been the problem of a fascist government in Khartoum. In Khartoum, the capital, for the last 40 plus years, there's been a fascist government, far right extremist, policies. They claim sovereignty, but they work with the World Bank and put heavy austerity measures, privatizing large sectors of the economy. So they've been going along with that program, but kind of walking that step until 2014. That's when they joined it fully into that fold of the Gulf Arab countries. Then in 2019, a popular movement sparked and, removed Bashir. Once Bashir was out of the picture, the strong man who was kind of towing that line between the East and the West and everything, then it became kind of an open playing field for a lot of intelligence, the U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, the UAE, Turkey, people because of the strategic location of Sudan and the amount of resources. Sudan geographically is a place that connects North Africa with the Horn of Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, and the Sahel region. If you look at Sudan and its geography, it connects all of these regions together. So historically, it was even like a super highway of civilizations and of movement and of trade and stuff like that. And that's why it's always been on the US's radar as far as a place that has to be put, quote unquote, under control. This pressure, like neo-colonial pressure, led to the powers inside of Sudan, specifically the army and the RSF, vying for power. And not just political power, but economic power as well. And this is where countries like the UAE fully adopted the RSF. Now, those of you, your audience who are old enough, probably remember in the 2000s, the Save Darfur movement, the genocide in Darfur. And people usually don't follow up to see, what happened to that campaign, like what happened to that genocide. The genociders won. The Janjaweed militia actually was legitimized and became the RSF that we know today. And the European Union funneled money to them so that they can protect the borders and quell migration. The UAE and Saudi Arabia recruited them so that they fight the Houthis, Ansar Allah in Yemen. So the RSF slowly became a country within a country. So they committed genocide in the 2000s. And then when Bashir was removed, they overthrew another civilian government. And then it became the question of, well, how can you have 2 armies in one country? You can't have the official army, SAF, and you can't have the RSF side by side. There has to be a security sector reform. And that's where basically the old guard that were in SAF and the new guard that's in the RSF bumped heads because none of them want to give up power. None of them want to give up the resources, the vast gold mines, the livestock, all of the political power that comes along with that. The Red Sea, so many different countries want ports on the Red Sea. That's also a part of it. Food security for the Middle East, Sudan has vast agricultural projects. But so all of these things kind of created the perfect storm. But it's still, I mean, you see in 2023 and 2024, Netanyahu brought out to the UN General Assembly a map that had the new Middle East. And it basically included the Gulf countries, Egypt, and Sudan. So, there was some criticisms in the beginning of the war. People were like, don't make everything about Israel. Well, Sudan got pushed into this new Middle East map. And apparently all of the policies that were pushed on it were in lockstep with US and Israel policy. And this just basically broke the country because they propped up these criminal entities like the RSF and Bashir's party, the NCP, within, controlling SAF. And, one of the goals of this war is to kill any kind of sovereign citizen movement to move towards democracy and let go of these, monopolies, these military monopolies on the Sudanese economy. There are other issues as well. The Bashir regime for 40 years has been pushing an Islamo-Arab centric policy and trying to make Sudan into one homogeneous, identity of being Arabs and being Muslim. And this also made non-Arabs within Sudan, indigenous groups, feel like they're second-class citizens. That's what led to the separation of South Sudan. It led to genocides in South Sudan and Darfur and the Nuba Mountains. So we have a lot of complex problems that were never solved, and everything was just pushed under the rug. And this is what led right now. But the genocide that's going on right now in Al-Fashir is kind of a continuation of a long, track record of this central government basically trying to quell its citizens and coerce them.
So once again, Israel is involved. Skylar brings up a good point here. So they want Sudan as part of the new Middle East because Sudan has all the gold and farmland.
That's part of it. Yes. But more importantly, so that Sudan doesn't become part of a resistant axis to US and Israel policy. Sudan is a country of 40 million people. Between it and Israel, there's only one country geographically, and that's Egypt. So the proximity, also the geographic proximity, makes it so where that they want to make sure Sudan kind of is kept in check. And of course, part of it is also they don't want Sudan to be a solid ally with Russia or China or any one of the other competing countries with the West. So, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. The resources is part of it. And part of it is kind of geostrategic as well.
So we cannot stress this enough that once again, we have another conflict that Israel is a part of. I want to get your opinion about this, Masab. I have seen videos of people fleeing Sudan. When people are fleeing Sudan right now, those who are able to get out, where are they going?
So that's one of the biggest, the big tragedy right now is the magnitude of the war itself. Try to think about this. 12 million people displaced, 12 million people being displaced. Basically, the Sudanese, they went in all different directions. There's 1.5 million that went to Egypt. There's another 1.5 million that went to Chad. 1.2 million went to South Sudan. I know family members people who went to Saudi Arabia. Some people went to Kenya. So really, when you look at the migration map as a result of this war, the Sudanese citizens had to disperse in all directions just to get away from all of the carnage.
So Egypt is taking in a lot of people then.
Absolutely.
Because my friend Nico House, he went to Egypt about a year ago, and he said he was surprised to see how many refugees were in Egypt. There were even Syrian refugees in Egypt. He had mentioned that. So it just seems like Egypt is taking in a lot of people. So this is really interesting. Thank you so much for this. The Oracle says, which group represents the indigenous Sudanese people?
I mean, they're all pretty much indigenous. But when we talk about non-indigenous, we don't want to make it seem as if these people are not Sudanese. They're Sudanese, but there are nomadic groups in Sudan. The nomadic groups go cross-border. So they would be in Sudan. They would go out, a lot of them are from Chad, Niger, But the agricultural communities, the indigenous communities, like in Darfur and in the Nuba Mountains, in the far north of Sudan and the eastern part of Sudan, there's a lot of indigenous groups. The complication comes in when, the Bashir regime set up this kind of pro-Arabized Sudanese agenda, where the non-Arab indigenous groups are the ones that get the brunt of the war. They suffer the most. Since the days of South Sudan, you have people in Darfur, in the Nuba Mountains, in Blue Nile State, the southern and southern western and southern southeastern parts of Sudan have historically had, the worst experience when it comes to, the state violence and the genocide that's been perpetrated on them.
So how can this particular issue, is there a way to solve this genocide in Sudan? And why aren't more, and this is just a question I've been having for a long time. Why aren't other nations in that region pushing back against what is happening in Sudan?
Okay, so I mean, there's two folds to this. Like the solutions right now, there's kind of two tracks that are going. The U.S. is hosting, talks between the Egypt, the Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and they're talking strictly to the army and the RSF. There's some breakthrough, partial breakthrough. They're talking now about what the conditions are for the ceasefire, for like a humanitarian pause and then a ceasefire. So that's going along slowly. The other track is with the African Union, bringing together all of the political actors in Sudan to have a comprehensive dialogue. So that was supposed to kick off like a few months ago. It got delayed, but most likely if there's a breakthrough with this ceasefire, then there would be that bigger dialogue. And that's actually where the fundamental problems should be solved. So the issue of accountability is a huge one, where basically there has to be some framework of transitional justice. Just like a lot of African conflicts, you have to have truth and reconciliation. You have to have some sort of accountability for war crimes. You have to have some kind of rapprochement to the millions of IDPs and refugees right now return. You have to have some form of security sector reform where you have one national army instead of all of the armed groups that are in Sudan right now. So these are solutions, but they're slow solutions. But there's no way around it this time. There were a lot of wars in Sudan that ended in negotiations, but they ended with power sharing rather than ending with some kind of fundamental dialogue to actually see how to move forward from there and how to avoid any of these wars in the future. So these things are in their infancy stages, unfortunately. But the reason the countries around Sudan are not able to stop this is because our neighbors are at war with each other as well, unfortunately. Egypt and Ethiopia have a long-standing conflict, partially to do with the GERD dam, the Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, and Egypt just outwardly hostile towards the dam, claiming that it'll affect the Nile waters. But it's more about regional influence and hegemony. You have, Khartoum has historically had a bad relationship with Chad. Of course, South Sudan separated, so there's some tension over there. A bad relationship with Libya. Eritrea and Ethiopia are not on the same page anymore, and they're kind of weighing how this war would affect them. And it really did. The war did affect all of the neighboring countries, from cross-border, troop movements to encroachment to taking in so many refugees. So all of the countries do actually want this war to stop, but they're not agreeing among each other. These are some of the problems that we have within the African Union of, conflicts within that. But there's been some positive steps. Like, for example, the BRICS included both Egypt and Ethiopia into the BRICS. They added them in 2023, I think, as a way to also say that, hey, we're all part of the same kind of global South. So why don't we stop the fighting and focus on development and partnerships and stuff like that? But again, it didn't really, show any concrete results yet. But the long arc of, this conflict will end with some kind of negotiated settlement. It's just a question of how long will that take.
Okay, here's a great question here from Ancient Crustacean. Where is the foreign intelligence in this war? Is there a local side versus a native side funded by foreigners, or are both sides funded by foreign nations? Or is it like Gaza and there isn't two sides, it's one side doing all the bad? That's a good question. Where's the funding coming from?
So who's at war right now? The Sudan Armed Forces against the RSF. The Sudan Armed Forces is primarily pushed by Egypt. Egypt has had since 2019, unfortunately, has had a pretty negative role in Sudan, trying to solidify military rule in Sudan, but also kind of, adopting SAF as their close ally. The bigger and more, dangerous threat is from the UAE. The UAE have adopted the RSF and have been funding it since way before the war. And through the war in Yemen, they've enabled the RSF to be kind of a country within a country. So unfortunately, there aren't any good actors leading the charge of the war, but these things change, and the war, the way it's going right now, I don't see any one of these polar, these leaderships as being someone, people to get behind. Now, that being said, there are a lot of people who picked up arms after 2023 to defend themselves. A lot of people who got into the under the SAF umbrella to defend their areas from the RSF. So these are people that are regular citizens and they just had to pick up arms. On the other side, the RSF, because they recruit on a tribal basis, if you're part of a tribe that's been targeted by the RSF, then your choices are very clear. Either you join the RSF or you get bulldozed by them. So they're like, all right, yeah.
What is the RSF?
It's the Rapid Support Forces. These are who used to be the Janjaweed in the 2000s. And then during the Bashir regime, they kind of gave them a proper name of the Rapid Support Forces. This is the main militia that's committing the atrocities right now in Darfur.
Okay. That's good to know, because I think that this is very different, because like when we talk about the genocide that's happening in Gaza, it's a little bit more straightforward, whereas with Sudan it's a little bit different because there's different groups, as you were referring to there. The Oracle says, so the Sudanese of Arab descent are the groups perpetuating the genocide with the assistance of the UAE and other US aligned actors? ?
Yeah, so the whole Arab thing in Sudan is pretty convoluted. You know what I mean? And if you want to look at it that way, both sides have an Arab supremacist undertone to all of their ideology, their movements, their alliances, and everything. So historically, it was both sides that committed the genocide in Darfur. It was both sides that committed the genocides in the Nuba Mountains and in the Blue Nile and these places. So it's actually the same Arab supremacy that got split into two right now. Now, that being said, a lot of non-Arab groups have joined the different sides. Some of them have joined the RSF and some of them have joined SAF. So it's not strictly right now along those ethnic lines. It's more about kind of, geography and alliances right now. But that is a common denominator between SAF and RSF. The policies that they followed and the genocides that were committed by both of them. 2023 is just them kind of disagreeing on who's going to take the bigger piece of the pie when it comes to Sudan.
Wow, this is insane. Why do you feel more corporate media outlets are not discussing this?
I think because of how complicated it is, number one. Number two, there's no clear, good guys and bad guys, the way the media usually likes to put it in a certain box where it's like, okay, who do we root for? and it just doesn't fit that module. But the other part of it, the corporate media doesn't cover it, because both sides, when you follow the money, it goes back to this U.S.-Israel alliance in the region. Sudan's been pushed into this place and been shoved into the Middle East, even though when you look at Sudanese, you can't tell us apart from our African neighbors at all. I could be mistaken for an Ethiopian. Western Sudan might be mistaken for a Chadian. People in the Nuba Mountains might be mistaken for South Sudanese. Even people in the north are Nubians, and they belong to indigenous Black groups. So it's like the insistence of including Sudan into this Western Asia, so-called Middle East fold is kind of also one of the things that broke the country and led to kind of what we're seeing right now.
This is really interesting. Again, I just feel like still a lot of people don't know about this because, it's been happening in the Congo as well. Margaret Kimberly came onto the show to discuss this a while back about genocide in the Congo. Israel had its hand in that as well with the mining, which I discussed before on the show. But I just think that, again, it's just either highly suppressed. But when it comes to corporate media, they're not really discussing this the way that they should. It's alarming. The video footage that I've seen, and I've mainly seen a lot of this stuff on Al Jazeera or TRT World is where I've seen the video footage of what's happening in Sudan. But corporate media, for the most part, has been pretty silent as to what is going on there. And on that point, Shazmatica has a good point. Please tell us where we can get unfiltered news about Sudan. There are lots of videos surfacing without verification.
So my colleagues at IN Network, AYIN Network, that's one of the best sources for on-the-ground reporting, for video reports. You'll get a lot from it. Their Twitter is at AYIN Sudan. And it's basically, a repository going back to like 2013 and 2014. But, even now we have, they have a lot of testimony from the people who left Al Fashir and eyewitness testimonies to what they've seen and what they've been through.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Masab. And where can people also follow your work? You also contribute to Black Agenda Report, correct?
Yes, I'm contributing. I started to contribute to Black Agenda Report. So I have some reports over there, and hopefully I'll have more coming up.
All right, Masoub, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sabrina. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Masoub. So thankful that he could come on. I know you guys have been wanting to hear about this for quite some time. So, and I can bring him and others on later on as well so that we can continue to follow what's happening in the Sudan. So if you guys can't tell, I have a wicked cold. That's why my voice sounds a little muffled, but we're going to power through. We do have election results live tonight. We are going to have a couple of guests circle in throughout that segment. We have a guest coming from New Jersey. I don't know if you guys are aware, but the race in New Jersey, according to the poll, was tied between the Republican and the Democrat. I don't know what's happening in New Jersey. Amani Oakley's going to come on. Maybe she can let us know what's up. Okay. We have a couple of people coming from New York. And my comrade JB is also going to come pop onto the show as well. So we can cover some of these races that are happening. Of course, I think the biggest race that a lot of people are going to be looking at tonight is the NYC mayor race. I've never heard this much hoopla about a mayor race before, but that is one of the ones that is going to be the big focus of tonight. So speaking of that, if you haven't done so, if you can, please answer that poll question. I'm curious to see what you guys think is going to happen. I will tell you, I did just see a report come through that says most of the exit polls in New York City are saying that they do not feel that Mondami's policies are realistic. But I will say this, exit polls during Bernie Sanders' 2020 run showed that the majority of people approved of like Medicare for all, but Bernie didn't win most of those states in the Democrat primary. So with the exit polls, sometimes you never know. Like that doesn't mean they didn't vote for Zoran. That doesn't mean they voted for Cuomo. We just never know with these things, sometimes with the exit polls. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and share the patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. We have a couple of stories that we want to cover before we get into the election news, before the polls close. It's crazy things happening out there in these streets. But first and foremost, thank you to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. They're pretty cool too. Yeah. And of course, we also have members. All of their names are listed here. I don't know what happened to my document here. I don't know what I did. Anywho, all of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much for your support. Again, yes, tonight is election night. We have a lot going on. Tonight is probably the biggest streaming night of the year. Probably the biggest one. It's 2025, so probably the biggest streaming night of the year. Everybody is streaming right now. Because people are looking at what I think, again, is going to be that NYC race, right? So, oh my God, we had so much to get into. We're going to dive into this Dick Cheney story next, okay? Thank you for the super chat, Jenna. Sabby, can you say stop funding foreign countries in Creole? I don't know Creole, so I can't. Maybe someone else can. I can't. But sorry. Oh, and thank you, Crum. Sending you healing energy, Sabrina. Thank you. Yeah, earlier today, I was sneezing and coughing at the same time. So, mighty power cold. Anywho, let's go ahead and get into this first news story here, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not done so, please be sure to smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. Let's go ahead and get into it, ladies and gents. Dick Cheney, former Vice President Dick Cheney, has died. And the way that corporate media has been talking about Dick Cheney today, you would have thought they were talking about someone else. So tonight on this show, we're going to tell you who Dick Cheney really was. Like, this is laughable to me. Like, they're acting like, oh my God, well, Dick Cheney, No, we're going to tell you the truth about who Dick Cheney was on this show. Let's go ahead and get started with this clip here. This was the announcement. Dick Cheney has died.
To the end, he never wavered, defending the Iraq War and the harsh interrogation tactics that defined his vice presidency, making him a lightning rod for critics, but an icon to conservatives.
Thank you all very much. Knock it off. A welcome like that's almost enough to want to make me run for office again.
Dick Cheney always spoke his mind, justifying interrogation practices later judged to be torture.
They were legal, essential, justified, successful, and the right thing to do.
In the end, his advice was even rejected by the commander-in-chief when George W. Bush fired Cheney's closest ally, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. It was a turn of events no one would have predicted when Richard Bruce Cheney became the 46th Vice President of the United States.
So help me God.
He had already served as the youngest White House Chief of Staff under Gerald Ford, a powerful congressman from Wyoming, and Secretary of Defense under the first President Bush. Born in Nebraska, Cheney's family moved to Casper, Wyoming when he was a boy. He won a scholarship to Yale but quit, finally graduating from the University of Wyoming and marrying his high school sweetheart, Lynn, a leading conservative author and commentator.
The man I married has a very interesting mind. Problems get redefined, and you find yourself thinking about things in new ways.
The Cheneys had...
Let's just pause here for a second. Yeah, thinking about things in new ways. Like, I don't know, starting a war based on a lie, watching all those people die, torturing people. I don't know, new things like that. People have to know that Dick Cheney was the architect of the Iraq War. And even though he was vice president at the time, he actually had a lot of power. It's interesting how some people will assert themselves in certain ways. But he actually had a lot of power. And he was in George W. Bush's ear quite often, from what I understand. The architect of the Iraq War. Some of you watching now, you may have family members, friends, maybe classmates who had to go, serve in Iraq. You may have known people who died in Iraq. You may have known some of the Iraqis who were killed. That all goes back to Dick Cheney. He's a war criminal. That's the way they should describe Dick Cheney, instead of this method they're using here.
2 daughters, Mary, mother of 2, whose same-sex marriage was strongly supported by her parents well before the Supreme Court weighed in, and Liz, mother of 5 and her father's political heir, elected to Congress from Wyoming just like he was, but incurring the wrath of Donald Trump for standing up against the former president and investigating the January 6th insurrection. In 1989, as the first President Bush's Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney became known as the cool-handed leader of the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein.
The cool-handed leader. Listen to the way that they're describing him instead of just calling him. This is how I would describe it. Dick Cheney was a war criminal. He started the war in Iraq and he based it on a lie and said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. A lot of Iraqis died. A lot of U.S. soldiers died too. That's something that Dick Cheney did. Also, to go along with Dick Cheney was the help of Tony Blair. These people are war criminals. I don't know why they're even trying to fluff this as they can. Wait till we get to the next video. The way that they're trying to discuss Dick Cheney and who he was. No weapons of mass destruction.
3 o'clock Thursday morning in the Gulf, the armed forces of the United States began an operation at the direction of the president.
During the Clinton years, Cheney made millions as CEO of Halliburton, the Dallas-based oil equipment company, until George W. Bush asked him to lead the search for a running mate in 2000, and Cheney ended up taking the job himself. He quickly became the most visible take-charge vice president in memory, briefing the press, briefing Congress, briefing the president.
Main reason I'm there is to serve him. He needs people around him who care only about his success, who are prepared to give him honest advice and never sugarcoat it.
He helped shape a cabinet some said looked more like Cheney's than Bush's, in a White House that for a while appeared to be a co-presidency.
Do you hear that? The way that he shaped a cabinet? Again, he was the vice president, not the president, but look how much power he had as vice president.
Cheney was the prime mover behind the theory, later proven wrong, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
We know he's been absolutely devoted to trying to acquire nuclear weapons, and we believe he has in fact reconstituted nuclear weapons.
This is something I point to as well. When Kamala Harris was bragging about getting this support, this endorsement from Dick Cheney, that was not something to brag about. What Kamala Harris should have done at that time is she should have called Dick Cheney out for the war criminal that he is. Saddam Hussein didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but that was the lie that Dick Cheney and George W. Bush used to tell the American people, this is why we're going to war with Iraq. And even at that time, it didn't make sense to me because I was just, I was young, but I was still trying to figure things out like, okay, let me get this straight. Now, first they said that we were attacked on September 11th, and they said the guys that were flying those planes, that took over those planes, were from Saudi Arabia. Now you're telling me that we're going to war with Iraq, not Saudi Arabia. But you say this is in response to 9/11, but then you're saying that it's because Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Never made any sense to me. But I was young, and I was just like, oh, maybe I don't know as much as I was willing to learn and find out more. There were very few representatives who voted against the U.S. government going to war with Iraq. Very few. The majority of representatives voted for it. A war based on lies.
Contrary to CIA reports, Cheney also linked Saddam to al-Qaeda and 9/11 and predicted Iraq would fall quickly.
Things have gotten so bad inside Iraq from the standpoint of the Iraqi people. My belief is we will in fact be greeted as liberators.
Pay attention to what he just said there. Let's go back just a little bit more because this word to me is important.
Quickly.
Things have gotten so bad inside Iraq from the standpoint of the Iraqi people. My belief is we will in fact be greeted as liberators.
be greeted as liberators. This is the same thing that Benjamin Netanyahu has said when he talked about Gaza, when he's talked about the West Bank. He's even said they want to go on to liberate countries in Africa. Like, this idea of liberate really does mean regime change, that they want to topple the leader. They want to put in a Western puppet that will do their bidding and at their beck and call. And then what we find is that the people in those countries are often worse off than they were before the regime change happened. Now, here's something I said before about Saddam Hussein. You know, we don't go around praising Saddam Hussein, but one of the things that I noticed is that when they toppled Saddam Hussein, that opened the door for ISIS to rise. When Saddam Hussein was there, he was able to keep some of those factions in check. But with Saddam out of the way, ISIS was able to come in and rise. And that's on purpose. That's on purpose. So no good comes from regime change. Let's speed ahead a little bit here so we don't show the explosion part there. And then there's a part where, of course, he accidentally shot his friend. Let's go on a little bit more here.
Scooter Libby for lying to a grand jury about the outing of a CIA operative. Throughout his public life, Cheney also battled heart disease, suffering his first heart attack in 1978 during his first run for Congress. Just days after being elected vice president, he underwent a procedure to open a clogged artery, and soon after, a pacemaker. Once out of office, Cheney underwent a successful heart transplant. Still, to the end, he stuck to his deeply conservative roots, making him one of the most powerful and controversial vice presidents in recent American history.
So this is another thing that sometimes some people may not be aware of, is that Dick Cheney has had like about 5 heart attacks from what I understand. There was a movie called Vice. It starred Christian Bale. He played Dick Cheney. A hell of a performance by Christian Bale, by the way. But after I watched that movie, I did research some of those things myself to see what actually did happen, what actually did not happen. And I want to break this down. Dick Cheney was not a nice person. Of course, we all know the Iraq War, but there were other things that Dick Cheney did along the way. He was against the Head Start programs for kids. He was against that. Just one of those people that really did believe that the U.S. government was in the right to come in and just topple these countries and take over for the people. You'll see here on CNN, they discuss a little bit more about his health.
Earlier, who was his cardiologist all of these years. Dick Cheney had 5 heart attacks and a heart transplant along his life. You know, obviously the family is heartbroken today, but they really did have many more years with him than they, expected because of the care he got and advances in cardiology.
Yeah, and I mean, such a long life in years and in also what he experienced, what he was part of, and what he brought about in the world of politics. I mean, it is hard when you're talking about a vice president to think of someone who's had more impact in the office of vice president than Dick Cheney, Jamie.
Listen to the way that they're talking about Dick Cheney, the war criminal, right? Now, let me go back to the very beginning of this video because I thought I heard someone laugh at the beginning. You guys have got to see this and tell me if you hear the same thing. And I think it's the guy in the middle. Listen to
Breaking news this morning, former Vice President Dick Cheney has died at the age of 84. For a stretch of about 30 years, it's hard to list many people who had a greater effect on the course of American history. Cheney's family says he died due to complications of pneumonia and cardiac and vascular disease. The Cheney family released a statement saying, in part, Dick Cheney was a great and good man who taught his children and grandchildren to love our country and to live lives of courage, honor, love, kindness, and fly fishing.
Did you hear it? Did that sound like he laughed a little bit? Did it sound like he laughed when he said the kindness part? Okay.
We are grateful beyond measure for all Dick Cheney did for our country, and we're blessed beyond measure to have loved and been loved by this noble giant of a man. CNN's Wolf Blitzer looks back at Dick Cheney's life and legacy.
Gradually, I realized that the person who was best qualified to be my vice presidential nominee was working by my side.
For most of his adult life, Richard Bruce Cheney was the ultimate Washington insider.
That I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
Named as George Bush's running mate in 2000, Dick Cheney quickly forged a public identity as a no-nonsense, disciplined gatekeeper, a powerful politician to whom and through whom access and influence flowed. But his appearance at the very highest levels of government was by no means his first time in the national spotlight.
And then they go into his history before, which we already showed you. But anytime someone mentions Dick Cheney to me, I just think about all the people that died in Iraq. And I remember Madeleine Albright not caring about those Iraqi children. I remember the statement she made then, and she tried to come back and apologize or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah. See, this just goes to show you how the landscape is so different now. If you look at the time that we're in now, more Americans now are anti-war. And don't get me wrong, there were people that were anti-war during that time as well. But I feel like it's louder now. And I feel like it's louder now because of social media. We didn't have social media back then. So I feel like a Dick Cheney type of candidate or George W. Bush type of candidate would not fare well today. I think we all can say we saw that with Nikki Haley when she ran in the Republican primary. As you could see, a lot of people were just not interested in her. And then there was the fact that Dick Cheney, till this day, would not apologize for the torture that was used in Iraq as well. Here he is. This was years later when he was confronted by Chuck Todd, not willing to apologize for the torture methods that were used. Listen to this. He doubled down.
No apologies, no regrets from former Vice President Dick Cheney for the harsh CIA interrogation techniques used on terror detainees after 9/11. What the Senate Intelligence Committee labeled torture in its blistering report this past week, the former VP today called necessary as he delivered a powerful counterattack this morning on NBC's Meet the Press. Mr. Cheney took strong exception to that Senate report and, contrary to its conclusions, told our Chuck Todd that the interrogation techniques absolutely worked. NBC's Kristen Welker is at the White House tonight with more on this. Kristen, good evening.
Lester, good evening. Facing heavy criticism after the Senate intelligence report was released this past week, former Vice President Dick Cheney was unapologetic today and said the Bush administration got it right.
Look, guys, it's Kristen Welker. But before she was working with Meet the Press, right? Before she had the desk job at Meet the Press where she is today, or is it Face the Nation? One of them, Meet the Press, Face the Nation. I forget which one, but this is her back in the day.
Former Vice President Dick Cheney unwavering in his support for the harsh interrogation tactics that happened on his watch, today ratcheted up his defense on Meet the Press.
I'd do it again in a minute.
Cheney argued the methods, including prolonged periods of waterboarding, were necessary in the wake of the September 11th attacks and insisted the procedures were not torture.
Torture was what the al-Qaeda terrorists did to 3,000 Americans on 9/11. There's no comparison between that and what we did with respect enhancement.
So do you see the rhetoric that is coming from Dick Cheney's mouth here? It's similar to what you hear people say today. What happened to the Palestinian people is nothing compared to what happened on October 7th, the brutal, horrific attack on October 7th. So they've been playing this game. If people are not aware, waterboarding is a method of torture. It's just one of the methods that were used, not all of them. When someone waterboards you, it basically feels like you're drowning. Yes, that is a form of torture. So even years later, after the Iraq War, Dick Cheney doubled down and did not regret torturing people. I mean, this is a sick dude.
A fired-up Cheney called the report politically motivated, and that was his more tempered language.
I won't use the word on your show. It may be family. It's a crock. It's not true.
And he disputed the report's claim that the interrogation tactics provided no credible information.
Absolutely all of this information in here, no seed of doubt that whether this worked or not.
It worked. It absolutely did work.
But one of the strongest critics of the program, Republican Senator John McCain, who was tortured as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, took to the Senate floor this week to argue just the opposite.
I know from personal experience that the abuse of prisoners will produce more bad than good intelligence.
And today, McCain again questioned Cheney's claim that the techniques worked.
It's not about them. It's about us. It's about us. What we were, what we are, and what we should be.
Democrats said.
Isn't it weird watching this again, like going back and seeing this and seeing John McCain and how things were back then? It's so weird now. It's just so weird. But John McCain at that point in time came out against this when a lot of his comrades weren't willing to do so. You see, it's a little bit more, I feel like it's easier today for people a part of the Republican Party to say no more wars. No, we don't want to be a part of this. But at that point in time, I felt like John McCain kind of stood alone. Let's continue on a little bit more here.
What happened was, in fact, torture.
With respect to waterboarding, and the vice president is obviously comfortable with it, I consider it to be torture.
Still, there seemed to be little appetite on either side of the aisle for reopening a Justice Department investigation into those responsible for the program. The big question now, what this debate means for the future of the CIA.
I think that going forward, you'll see CIA officers very hesitant to use many of these kinds of techniques as long as they remember this investigation. But it's hard to change an institution for many generations.
It's hard to change the institution for many generations. Yeah, the thing is like, that's just one of the methods that was used. But Dick Cheney was a war criminal. He agreed with torturing people, and then even after the fact, didn't apologize for it, say no, it was the right thing to do at that point in time. He told the American people that we were going to war with Iraq because Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. That was false. Think about all the people that died under Dick Cheney's direction. So I don't know how, young everyone is in the chat, but some of us remember. And some of us had friends that went to Iraq. Some of them didn't come back. A war built on a lie. That was Dick Cheney. Never forget that, folks. But Dick Cheney has now died. Did I play the Noam Chomsky part? Yeah, Noam Chomsky commented about that too a while back. The genocidal, shout out to that squirrel again. The genocidal Zionist war criminal Dick Cheney is dead, but his crimes should never be forgotten. They include firing depleted uranium shells into Fallujah, still causing babies to be born with deformities and cancer. He then endorsed Kamala Harris, which she gleefully touted. See, the chemicals that were used, like, people are still affected by that. This is what Noam Chomsky said at that point.
Fallujah, first of all, was one of the worst atrocities of the 21st century. The Iraq War itself was the worst crime of the 21st century, easily. Fallujah was probably the worst war crime carried out during that war. The Marines, 7,000 Marines attacked Fallujah, probably killed everyone who was there. They called them insurgents, but whatever that means. The first day of the invasion of Fallujah, take a look at the New York Times, had a front page photograph of Marines breaking into the General Hospital, which is a war crime, throwing all the patients on the floor and shackling them, throwing the doctors on the floor. It was hailed as a triumph. When the high command was asked why they broke into the hospital, they had an explanation. They said it was a propaganda center for the insurgents. It was releasing casualty figures, and therefore it's legitimate to carry out a major war crime. Apparently pretty exotic weapons were used there, and there's evidence, which international agencies don't want to look at, of high levels of cancer, other effects of maybe depleted uranium, maybe something else. It's a major atrocity. But it's hailed here as a victory. The only way it is referred to now is as a tragedy because the Marines fought so hard to liberate Fallujah, and now ISIS is in control of it. I mean, you don't know what.
See, and that's what I was pointing to. That's how ISIS was able to come about. So There's a lot, you guys. There's so much that could be said, but we got to keep the show moving on because we do have guests coming on for election night as well. But you guys get how I feel about this. It's just the way I'm hearing people talk about Dick Cheney. It's disturbing, absolutely disturbing. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you, Deconstructing. In NYC, I wrote my name in for mayor, as I tend to vote for the person I trust the most, and that's myself. DCT for NYC Mayor 2029. That's awesome, D. That's awesome. Thank you, Chip. Hide your infants. Dick Cheney has died. There will be an evil spirit roaming for a few nights, and it's a full moon too. Thank you, New York Varsity. He was the CEO of Halliburton, a contractor that had a no-compete contract during the Iraq and Afghan war. No one allowed to compete, made millions. Yep. Thank you, Mountain Star. What up, Doc? What's up, Mountain? And thank you for this one. Did he shoot his friend in the face? Yeah, they said that was an accident. It was a hunting accident, but yeah. And thank you, Jay. Dick Cheney said about Kamala, she shares my view of the world, and she bragged about his endorsement. This, in part, led to her undoing. Yeah, if I was her, I would have rejected that endorsement from Dick Cheney. Kira, thank you. Sabby, when is the movie showing? 2 weeks. Actually, yeah, 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks, Eric. The in-person premiere is November 15th, which is that Saturday. And then the watch party will be that Tuesday, coming around that Tuesday. So I think that'll be the 17th. But I'll remind you guys. Yeah. Hey. All right, let's keep the show moving, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move on to the next story here while we wait for those polls to close. So, Ben Shapiro is not too happy with Tucker Carlson and the like. There is this divide that is happening, at least among the MAGA podcasters, which does impact MAGA voters, I guess. Candace Owens said earlier today on Twitter that she's not voting today. And she said the reason why is because she doesn't feel comfortable voting until she finds out the truth that happened to Charlie Kirk. Things are changing, folks. And now we see Ben Shapiro is very upset with Tucker Carlson. He mainly goes after him, not as much Candace, but mainly goes after Tucker Carlson because he had interviewed Nick Fuentes, but also he is blaming Tucker Carlson for the divide that is currently happening among MAGA. You guys have got to hear this, and we're going to get into a little bit more of this conversation. I'm going to tell you why they're freaking out.
I want to do something different on today's show. We're going to cover one topic in depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the Groypers. They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds, blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend.
Okay, so he is saying that Tucker Carlson is an agent in that movement. See what happens when you choose to leave the club. See what happens when you start to disagree and you don't want to repeat their talking points anymore. And you're like, oh, I feel differently about this. See what happens when you get kicked out of the club. So I thought it was interesting at the end of that part, he had to add, and also not a good friend. I can't make this up, you guys. We can't make this up. But Ben Shapiro, he is saying that Tucker Carlson is an agent in this. Because I guess you can't be a part of the same political party and disagree on some of the issues. Is that what this is about? You mean to tell me everyone in the Republican Party agrees on every single thing? Because I've been saying for quite some time, some of them are against the wars, some of them are not against the wars. But this is where Ben Shapiro's going, and I'm going to tell you why he made this video. Ben Shapiro made this video because he is noticing that Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, and others that are anti-war and also calling out Israel for the genocide, they are starting to bleed into the GOP base. It can cause support. That's why Ben Shapiro is making this video. Let me get this out there because some of the young people are starting to say, why are we supporting Israel? And this is becoming a problem. And it's not like it's one person either. There have been multiple wanting to move away from that. That's why Ben makes this video.
And Tucker Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation. Now, before we explain what's been happening, let's make one thing clear. This is not about free speech or cancellation. It was never about free speech or cancellation. Free speech has a definition, the right to speak free of governmental coercion. I believe in it, of course. I've always defended it. Criticism of bad speech is, in fact, just a form of free speech. Cancellation also has a definition, the banning of particular people, including people like Nick Fuentes, from platforms like X or Facebook. I believe that Nick Fuentes is odious and despicable, but I've never called for his cancellation. And in fact, I've called for his restoration to those services, despite the fact that I think he's odious and despicable. It is not cancellation to draw moral lines between viewpoints. In fact, we used to call that one of the key aspects of conservatism. It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost Hitler's supporters like Nick Fuentes.
But who decides what the moral lines are going to be? Is that decided by Ben Shapiro? Is that decided by Tucker Carlson? Is that decided by Republican politicians? You see, here's the thing, right? Like we've had this argument back and forth as well when it comes to people who support the progressive policies, the Democratic Party. And then you have the Democratic Party leadership like Hakeem Jeffries, who's also mouthing off again earlier today, says, no, Zohran Mamdani is not the future of the Democratic Party. You have the Democrat leadership like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries right now, who are basically saying the party is not moving in that direction. So they're the gatekeepers. In the Republican Party, who's making that decision? Who is the gatekeeper in the Republican Party? Because it almost sounds like Ben Shapiro feels as though you have to agree with all the points that he makes. Let's continue.
It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. It's not cancellation if you urge others to stop promoting those who rhetorically fluff Nazi apologists. Those are all elements of free speech. And anyone who says differently is lying to you and lying for the most cynical reasons to misdirect from their own defense of those Nazi apologists and their promoters. The issue here isn't that Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show last week. He has every right to do that, of course. The issue here is that Tucker Carlson decided to normalize and fluff Nick Fuentes, and that the Heritage Foundation then decided to robustly defend that performance. Those who criticize both Tucker and Heritage aren't canceling. They are quite properly drawing a moral line.
So it's really interesting because Mark Levin did say at the RCP event that Tucker Carlson needs to be canceled. He did say that these people need to go. He said Tucker, Candace, etc. Those people got to go. I don't think Ben Shapiro really has any standing ground to talk about who people should bring on their podcast after he sat down there face to face and interviewed war criminal, genocidal maniac Benjamin Netanyahu. It's just interesting to me. Like all of a sudden, Ben Shapiro cares about like, oh no, race and racism. Really? All of a sudden, this is an issue for you, Ben Shapiro? He goes on to say a little bit more here. It's not even just about the Nick Fuentes interview that Tucker Carlson had. It's the way that Tucker Carlson has been moving since he has, left Fox News. He gets into this here.
Has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar. Tucker excuses Vladimir Putin's murderous and barbarous reign. He has even become one of his most ardent defenders.
It is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. Its architecture, its food, its service, than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
So I want to say something about this here. Ben Shapiro has a problem that Tucker Carlson went to Russia and had that interview with Vladimir Putin. But I say this, look at it this way. I have watched numerous interviews of Zelensky. I've seen Zelensky everywhere. We didn't see corporate media sit down with Vladimir Putin. We never heard the other side of the story. I said the same thing about Gaza. Like, everybody keeps interviewing Benjamin Netanyahu, but you notice they're not going into Gaza and talking to the people in Gaza. So that's the narrative that corporate media wants you to push. Ben Shapiro sees this as a problem. He's like, oh no, he's trying to be friends and buddies with Vladimir Putin. Or maybe he's giving the other side of the story. Now, we'll also say this. Not many people can go to Moscow and sit down and interview Vladimir Putin and come back to the United States and not get searched or detained or checked. Tucker Carlson has an in where the rest of us don't. So just keep that in mind. Ben goes on.
So I guess you put in 10 rubles here and you get it back when you put the cart back. So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment. I went from amused to legitimately angry. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us.
Ben Shapiro apparently has a problem with that. But the reality is this. Yes, in some of these other countries, food is cheaper. And some of those other countries, they have natural ingredients in their food. I lived in Europe for about six and a half years. Their food is different. It don't taste the same. It really doesn't. Imagine going to the grocery store and then realizing that, oh, wait a minute, the taxes are included. So I don't get a different price when I get to the register. Some countries have that. Imagine going out to dinner and not realizing that you don't have to tip your waiter because they're paid a living wage. And in some countries, they see that as an insult if you tip them. Imagine buying food that has 3 or 4 ingredients and not 25 on the back of the package. Some of these other countries that we've been taught to hate, they actually have healthy food. They don't have GMOs and all these additives that are put into their food like we do. And then we wonder why they live longer and why they don't have the same health issues that we do. Goes on here.
When Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, by the way, Vladimir Putin was so amused by Tucker Carlson's easy questioning that he actually mocked him. Tucker Carlson has massaged the Iranian dictatorship and admitted to not asking any difficult questions of the president of that dictatorship.
The interview is limited by a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer, such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable.
Tucker bizarrely worships at the altar of Qatar.
They're mad at you because you don't put your parents in some institution. Maybe they're trying to break up your families.
Well, it can be a reason. Honestly, I don't know what is really the purpose behind this, but we see that a lot of things that are happening are attacks on humanity in general.
Let me pause here. I'm getting really tired of the Qatar comment, the Qatar comment. Qatar is an extension of the United States. I don't know why people keep saying this and they're like, oh my God, that person took money from Qatar. There's a big ass US military base in Qatar. It's basically just an extension of the United States. That's what Qatar is. So it's an ally of the U. I don't understand this. I don't know why people keep saying, oh my God, they're in Qatar. He went to go talk to. So no, he's not worshiping at the altar of Qatar. He's having a conversation. I'll be goddamn it. I never thought if someone would have told me 2-3 years ago, Sabs, there's going to come a time in the future when you're actually going to find yourself defending what Tucker Carlson says. I would have never believed it. But this is where we're at now. This is where we're at now because Ben Shapiro is a freaking moron. If there's anyone who is sitting there worshiping at an altar of another country, it's Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro kissed Israel ass so much, he might as well just live there. I don't know why he lives here. Ben Shapiro feels as though Israel is everything. That's where Ben should be. I don't know why you're here, Ben. I don't know why you're here. Point blank. It's just interesting because, yeah, I remember going through that Vladimir Putin interview with Tucker Carlson, and I said, oh, look, Vladimir Putin's laughing here. He's chuckling with some of those things. We talked about that. But then I also watched Ben Shapiro's interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, and it was just, that was worse. Do I have a problem? Am I more offended by Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin? Or am I more offended by Ben Shapiro's interview with Benjamin Netanyahu? Who Ben Shapiro fully supports, by the way, will tell you that it's not a genocide. So Mr. Facts don't care about your feelings. Apparently, that's not true for Ben Shapiro because I've been seeing over the past couple of months, Ben Shapiro got some feelings. Ben Shapiro got some feelings. You don't care. He has a problem that Tucker Carlson went to other countries and talked to leaders that, guess what? Western media doesn't give a microphone to. But I sat there and I watched these leaders say things, and then I researched it for myself to see, let me see if this is true. Surprise, to my surprise, because we've been lied so much by Western media. America is the most propagandized country in the world. We have been told a number of lies. But Ben Shapiro doesn't want to hear the facts. He's focusing on feeling, which is what he told you not to do. Wait till I show you the comments on this video.
It's when you lose the family value, when you lose the connection between the family themselves, you will lose the connection between the people as well, on a broader level, on the people in the same neighborhood, on the people in the same region, in the same countries. And that's basically will just make us, as individuals who are quote unquote independent from anyone, that's what we will feel. Yet it will just make our societies vulnerable and easy to be penetrated.
That's right.
Tucker Carlson praises Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, even as Maduro keeps the entire country in communist penury and ships fentanyl into the United States to kill Americans by the hundreds of thousands.
Again, Western propaganda from Ben Shapiro. We have told you guys about Maduro on this show a number of times. Western propaganda. So listen to this.
Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing. And that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics, not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned. Abortion is banned. Sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America.
So Tucker Carlson said right there, he is not defending, right? He said, not defending the country, just explaining to you what is happening in Venezuela and what they're like. And this is a good thing to bring up as well, is that a lot of the Latin American countries in South America This is true. We've talked to people on the show about this as well. They tend to be more, I guess, more left when it comes to economic issues, but more conservative when it comes to social issues, right? So, I mean, Ben Shapiro would agree with those conservative, opinions about the social issues. What is the problem? I'm just so confused. I don't get it. I don't understand. So where was he worshiping at the altar of Qatar, which is a U.S. ally? Where is he, pouring out this love and respect in defense of Nicolas Maduro? He's just telling you what else is happening in that country that you often don't get to hear about in Western media. That is an open lane. Let me be clear, folks. A lot of times people come to independent media because they're looking for something that corporate media is not giving them. There are certain lanes in independent media that are open lanes that some people choose to, let me look into this, let me look into that, like the gray zone, right? They realized that corporate media was not telling people the truth about foreign policy. That's their lane. Everybody has like a different thing that they focus on, like different lanes or whatever. But the reality is, it's almost like Ben Shapiro doesn't want people to tell people the other side. He just wants one narrative that's pushed out, and that's the narrative that he believes in and supports.
Only El Salvador really comes close.
Tucker Carlson glosses Hamas, the genocidal jihadi group behind October 7th, as a political organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Wasn't Hamas elected? Like, what is this?
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Israel and Mossad, making sure, of course, never to mention President Trump's name, because, of course, Tucker's a coward.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that.
Tucker Carlson has stated that President Trump has undermined.
So he just goes through the list of things. And I'm sorry, as I said it before, I don't know, Ben. Why? My question is this. Why isn't Ben Shapiro talking about the cover up of the Epstein files? Why did Ben Shapiro try to shoo that away? Well, they said there's nothing to see here, folks. Let's keep it moving, because it would implicate Israel. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad. Mossad is in Israel. That would implicate his precious Israel. That's why. I think those are the questions that people should ask. People should ask Ben Shapiro, Ben, why you aren't talking about those things? Why is it that you're only giving one perspective and you never go get the other side? Almost like you're trying to keep us in this little bubble. We'll go to another part here. He talked about this for quite a while. We're not showing the whole thing. He'll drive you crazy.
Charlie's death, TPUSA made Tucker Carlson one of its chief faces. Tucker, of course, spoke at Charlie's memorial, where he implied that hummus-eating nefarious Jews killed Charlie, with no mention of the ideology of the actual alleged murderer, who was, of course, a trans activist gay furry. Tucker Carlson, in fact, has spent more time talking about Jews and Israel since Charlie's death than about the Trans-Tifa ideology that motivated Charlie Kirk's killer. By a long shot, it's not close, which is not a surprise, since he seems to spend very little time these days attacking anyone on the left.
Mr. Don't focus on identity politics has to bring up identity. He always has to do this when all else fails. First of all, again, I told you guys, I have not seen any evidence that shows that Tyler Robinson is the killer. I haven't seen any evidence that shows that Tyler Robinson even acted alone. It's kind of weird that Kash Patel didn't want people to look further into that to see if there was any foreign intel that was attached to Tyler Robinson. I mean, all these cover-up things, it's very easy, but Ben Shapiro says this is the narrative that came from Kash Patel and the Trump administration, so I'm just going to echo those talking points. Ben Shapiro might as well just go work for Fox News. I don't get this. You're not alternative media. Ben Shapiro just echoes those talking points. I think he should just go work for Fox News at this point. It's sad. But Tucker Carlson did respond to Ben Shapiro. So I do want to show you what he said. He was on Dave Smith's podcast. The first part that I want to show you here, he was talking about Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, and Seth Dillon. So let's get into this part.
People like Ben Shapiro and Josh Hammer and Ted Cruz, all these people, like, they think in terms of groups. And that's what Levin said to me. It's like, my group, people are hurting my group. And it's like, if your group means your family, people you love, I get it. But if you're thinking purely in terms of your ethnic group, which is what he is saying, then you inevitably become very hateful toward other ethnic groups, actually. And in Ben's line about Ron Paul, who's like totally committed to nonviolence, by the way, you see that hatred. And so it does, I don't like it. I'll just get right to it. I'm not afraid personally. I'm not going to talk. I didn't grow up like in the world that, Seth Dillon grew up in, where you were encouraged to like talk about yourself all the time. Like, narcissism was a true sin that I never talk about. I try not to talk about myself in general, but I know a lot about, people trying to hurt me, been there in a real way. And which I've never talked about, not going to talk about now, but I'll just say I know what that is. And I know that, people like Seth Dillon or Ben Shapiro, they get a lot out of wearing bulletproof vests and like, oh, I'm so under attack and all this stuff. And it's like, the truth is they are openly pro-violence. So how in the world could you justify killing tens of thousands of children or justify a pager attack, which is an act of terrorism where you indiscriminately blowing people's genitals off? You don't know who's holding the pager. And you're.
Let me pause here for 1 second. One thing I will say is this. I think something that Tucker Carlson does not do is he does not call out the corruption. He doesn't get down to that part, right? Like, he'll tell you, okay, I don't agree with all these people being killed in Gaza. What is this about? Why do we have this allegiance to a foreign nation, like Israel? But he doesn't get to the corruption piece. And the answer to that question is because of the money. If you follow the money, then you'll know why the U.S. has the relationship that it has with Israel, right? It's not just AIPAC, it's Kufi. It's also J Street. It's all the, Israel lobby interest groups. But then on top of that, you're talking about Wall Street lobbyists as well, military industrial complex lobbyists as well. They're all in on this together. It's not just AIPAC, right? So I feel like he doesn't get to that part. He doesn't get to the corruption, right? So that part there is missing. He's asking the right questions, but he's not going to the extent of, oh, wait a minute, this is why it's happening because of all this corruption and all the money that's behind it. Let's go on a little bit more.
People like Ben Shapiro and I know that, people like Seth Dillon or Ben Shapiro, they get a lot out of wearing bulletproof vests and like, oh, I'm so under attack and all this stuff. And it's like, the truth is they are openly pro-violence. So how in the world could you justify killing tens of thousands of children or justify a pager attack, which is an act of terrorism where you indiscriminately blowing people's genitals off? You don't know who's holding the pager and you're celebrating it. What are you celebrating? You're celebrating violence. And they celebrate violence day after day. That's where their foreign policy comes from. That's where their worldview is. Strangling the neck of a Jew. Who even thinks that way? Someone who's thinking very often in violent terms. And so, and hateful terms. That's hate. And so people like that, when aroused to hysteria, and I feel sorry for them, and I just want to say that again, Lindsey Graham, another violence worshiper, like the idea that they're promoting violence, well, they've been promoting violence for decades because this whole project is about violence. It's about the thrill that they feel killing their enemies, the godlike power they imagine they have when they extinguish human life. That's the whole game for them. And
But I will add also, Lindsey Graham is doing what he's paid to do. Lindsey Graham takes money from a lot of corrupt, companies and industries and lobby interest groups. So he's doing what he's paid to do. That's the piece that I think Tucker should add to go along with this. It's not that these individuals are stupid or foolish or they just don't understand. No, they totally understand. And they made a decision that they were okay with being corrupt. They were totally, okay with that. and just willing to bite the bullet for the money.
We shouldn't oh, you're not promoting violence? Oh, you're definitely promoting violence. And that's why I oppose you.
And there's another piece here where he does issue an apology. Tucker Carlson did apologize for what he said about the evangelical Christians. You guys need to hear this part as well.
But I just want to say at the outset, because this has been weighing on me, I did say something that I really regret saying that I didn't fully mean. I said it because I was mad, which is always when I say things I don't really mean. When I get pissed, my wife's always telling me this. I was snippy and I didn't explain it. And I said something to the effect of, I despise Christian Zionists. And I'm just sorry that I said that, because I don't. I'm mad at a certain kind of thinking. Some of the nicest people I know are Christian Zionists, actually. You know, if you're in a car crash, they would save you. If you need someone to watch your bank account, they wouldn't steal from you. They're like really good people and sweet people. I want to be very specific quickly about what I was talking about. In at least a couple of different occasions, the Israeli government bombed churches in Gaza and killed a bunch of Christians. And not an accident, of course. I mean, this is like a very high-tech military with precision. I mean, they, gave pagers with bombs in them to Hezbollah. So like this is a military, a national defense institution that understands what it's doing. They didn't accidentally bomb 2 churches and kill these Christians, and they never apologized for it. And so I brought this up with a couple of Christian leaders, and including the Speaker of the House, and said, like, what is, we're paying to bomb churches? Because we're paying for it. And the response I got from every single one was, the Bible commands us to support Israel. And I said,
this is the one that drives me the craziest, right? Because anybody can say that, right? But we have separation of church and state in this country. And 2, the Bible isn't talking about that Israel either. Like, people have honestly taken the Bible and they've twisted into what they want it to be to support their foreign policy agenda. That's really what has been happening here. Israel wasn't the place, the modern day Israel that you see today. The Bible is not talking about these Europeans moving to the Middle East and taking over and taking out the indigenous people there. They're posers. See, they want to say that part, but they won't say this part as someone who grew up in the church. They won't say, the Bible also tells you that there will be those that come in my name and they are not me. There will be those that come in my name. They say that they are me, but they are not me. They are posers. And these are the things that we have to point out, right? All the people keep saying, well, the Bible says, point to it. Show me. And then we can go back to what I've said before as well. How do we know that the current Bible that you are reading has the correct interpretation of the original Bible? How do we know that all those scholars that sat down with King James for the King James version of the Bible, how do we know that they put everything in there? How do we know that it wasn't compiled in such a way to suit a Zionist agenda? That's the question that people need to ask. And that's the question that I think that Tucker Carlson should ask, instead of here saying, well, they're really nice people. Nah, they support genocide. That's not a nice person. Like, you don't have to apologize. I don't understand this. Well, I want to apologize for that. I don't mean that. They're really nice people. No, they're not. Anyone who sits here and supports a genocide of an entire group of people are not nice people. They're just not. Let's go on a little bit more here.
So Jesus is telling us that we need to get on board with murdering Christians. Is that what you're saying? And they basically were just like, shut up. And I found that extremely, as a Christian, extremely upsetting. And I've never kind of gotten over that, but I should have said that. That's what I was talking about specifically. We cannot support the murder of innocents. I don't care what the pretext is. That is not allowed in our religion. And if it is, then it's not my religion. That's not what the New Testament says at all. It's not even a close approximation of what it says. There's no justification for that in the New Testament, period. So I am distressed. I don't hate. I shouldn't have said despise, but I'm very distressed about that. And that's specifically what I was talking about. So I just want to apologize sincerely for not being clearer.
One thing I will say is this. One thing that I think Ben Shapiro was right about here, which is that Tucker doesn't want to point the finger at Donald Trump. He doesn't. I've noticed that, right? Like he doesn't want to point the finger and put the blame on him, but Trump is a part of a lot of this too. So I will say that's something I've noticed. But let me be very clear, folks, because you see, for those who may not have seen this, Ben Shapiro has some nerve talking about who interviewed who when he sat down across from Benjamin Netanyahu at this table. This wasn't a virtual conversation. He sat there in person with this genocidal war criminal. So you wanted to talk about who Tucker Carlson had an interview with. That to me is what is astounding. Just astounding to me. It's sick, it's disgusting, it's gross. But I'll tell you what this is really about. You want to know why Ben mad? You guys want to know why Big Ben is mad what they're doing here? They're losing support. They're losing support. You see, for years, I have seen them laugh at people on the left, Ben Shapiro and all them, say the left is crazy. They can't even figure out if they want to support Bernie Sanders or if they want to support Joe Biden. Remember that? Even though Democratic Party is not technically left. But now it's his party. Now it's the Republican Party. And now he's starting to see a lot of the younger people don't want to support Israel, don't want money going to Israel. A lot of the younger people who are part of the MAGA movement, when they said make America great again, and they wanted to put America first, actually wanted to put America first, not Israel. So they got a problem. Because this is not the days of George W. Bush. The MAGA movement is its own thing. And that's what Trump ran on. That's what people wanted who supported him. And that's what they wanted, to put America first. And people are looking around and they're seeing the grocery prices have not decreased. They're seeing that the prices are increasing, the pay is not increasing, and all these people are getting laid off, and a lot of them being replaced with AI. So to me, that's what this is about. That's why Ben Shapiro is coming after Tucker Carlson. That's why Mark Levin is coming after Tucker Carlson, because he has a large platform, right? Like everybody knows who Tucker Carlson is. I think that's why they called out Candace Owens, because she has a large platform. I also think that's why, of course, they're calling out Nick Fuentes. They see this splinter that is happening in the MAGA movement, and they're trying to figure out, how do we stop this? That's why Ben puts out this video. I think that Ben Shapiro, I feel like he never moved with the times. It's not 10 years ago. And the world is changing, the country is changing, and more Americans don't want these wars. So it's harder for them to make that case now like they used to. Now we can go to the comments. Let's look at the comments here. Sorry, guys. Again, I have a cold. Bear with me. Here's one. Just debate him. He'd gladly do it. Get back to work, Matt Walsh. Debate him. We're all noticing now. He broke out his biggest yarmulke for this one. Christ is King, America first. Ben, you have no choice but to debate him. It'll be the biggest thing in politics. Americanism, not globalism. Yeah, America first is the new movement, not Israel. These are his viewers. This isn't me. So look at this. The fact that you were so bad faith about his edgy jokes tells me everything I need to know, Ben. Ben Shapiro didn't move with the times. People have changed. The country has changed. And what I hear more and more is that people are tired of these wars. So this whole support for Israel that Ben Shapiro has, and for the evangelical Christians and for others that have been backing and supporting what Israel is doing, yeah, you're facing a problem. Israel can't afford to lose that base. Let's go to part 2 for Type V and C, Eric. We have one more story before we get into election night. Those polls will be closing before you know it, ladies and gents. Rain says, girl, turquoise is beautiful on you. Oh, thank you. That's sweet. Thank you, Texas. Levin and this Muppet are testing it with the Yahtzee stuff. Israel is helping fund known Banderas in Ukraine, staunch Yahtzees, so they are the Yahtzee contributors. Thank you, Mountain. What the F? Review Hollywood Matrix simulations. Qualified Candace is Mona Lisa. Veto from my cousin Vinny. In 1998, Snake Eyes, The House Wins. In 1988, They Live, when Roddy Piper ran out of bubblegum. Interesting. I'll have to check that. Thank you, Adar. Voted for Mondami. Older folks actually were excited about him. Pleasant surprise, South Bronx. Oh, interesting. We'll be getting to that shortly. Thank you, Ira. There is a video of Truman explaining how Israel wants to be our only ally. So it is Zionist propaganda to vilify Qatar. That makes sense. Thank you, Real Tim. Ben only cares that Tucker calls out Israel. And thank you, Brett. F Zio Nazis. Hashtag free Palestine. Thank you, Brett. Okay. Thank you, Lewis. It's mostly a Zionist country and we're just living in it. It's a good point. LPA says many of these truth tellers will only go, but so far. It's a good point. Thank you, Mountain. Top tier talkers telling truth. Thank you, Brett. U.S. 1 billion pyramid is at Israel Supreme Court. Professor Zinkas! I'm predicting Zoran with 55% and a mandate. Oh, Professor Zinkas, I don't know if you saw my text. I didn't know if you had time to hop on. Maybe not. But let me know. And thank you, Brahim. We all love you, Sabby. Oh, thank you. Love you too. I don't know if Professor Zinkas saw that or not, but I can check in a second. Okay, guys, if you haven't done so, please smash that like button. Thank you. And we're moving on to our next story before we get into the election madness. Hey, hey, hey. All right. Okay. This story coming out of Israel, shout out to Drop Site News for uncovering this. A while back, I told you that there was a video that was released and it made its way around social media where it showed Israeli soldiers were sexually assaulting a Palestinian detainee. There were several of them and that one guy. Now it seems as though that Benjamin Netanyahu is admitting that it happened, but no accountability for the soldiers who did what they did. Wait till I show you who they decided to reprimand. Let's get into this here from Drop Site News. IDF orders reveals Palestinian was gang raped by soldiers at, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I'm sorry. Said Taman was civilian, not a Nakba fighter. Remember we said before, a lot of the people that are detained are civilians. A classified Israeli military order shows the man Israeli soldiers brutally sexually assaulted on camera for 15 minutes was never charged with any crime. For months, pro-Israel advocates claimed he was an elite Hamas Nakba fighter who participated in October 7th to justify the atrocity. Okay, even if he was, that doesn't mean that you can just sexually assault someone. Like this is how far gone like Israel society is. It's insane. The leaked document confirms he was a civilian, one of 1,700 Gazans being held without charge and freed from Israel's torture sites in the recent exchange on October 13th, 2025. Under the deal, Israel has only agreed to free 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza who had not been charged with any crime. They continue to hold over 9,000 Palestinians captive. So this is the document that Drop Site News obtained, showing that guy that was in that video was a civilian. And we've seen this happen a number of times. Like, Israel is a sick, sick society. Let's go on here. I'm just making sure I'm not missing that part. Yeah. The UN video, they talk about it here. Listen.
And in fact, that made the situation worse, in my opinion, because the evidence that we collected about the sexual violence was not that the sexual violence was being perpetrated by individual male soldiers for the purpose of sexual gratification. It was systematic. It was directed towards humiliation of the victims, and humiliation in a way, to go now to this genocide report, that indicated an intention to destroy the sense of identity, the respect and the commonality of the Palestinian people. It was sexual violence used not for the purpose of individual self-gratification, but for the purpose of humiliation and destruction. And it was clearly part of standard operating procedures.
Standard operating procedures that came there from the UN. They have been doing this. And as much as Western media, told you since October 7th, spread that narrative across that Hamas committed those sexual assault atrocities, that was never proven. That was never proven. Multiple people have been able to debunk that, including people that said that they were victims, have come forward and said the exact opposite. A lot of these accusations from Israel are confessions. So they openly admit this and brag about it. And I want to show you this as well from Drop Site News. They even had a press conference. Let me show you here. Let's pause this for a second. These are the soldiers. The Israeli soldiers are holding a press conference. The Israeli soldiers who gang raped a Palestinian detainee at that torture center held a press conference boasting that they are still free. They proudly declared, "We will prevail." As for Israel's military prosecutor, who dared to investigate the case, an investigation that led nowhere due to pressure from the chief of staff, the defense minister, and Netanyahu. She allegedly leaked the videos of the assault to the media. She has now been placed under detention. I'll get to that in just a second. But these were the soldiers. And my thing is, don't cover up your face. Well, why are they hiding their faces? You know what I mean? Don't cover up your face. They know that they did this. So they were able to come out and hold a press conference.
נלחמים על הצדק שלהם, לא בשדה הקרב אלא באולמות בית המשפט. עשרות לוחמים שצריכים את הגב של הממשלה, את הגב של המערכת, כי הם הגנו על הבית ורק בזכותם כולנו כאן היום. אבל במקום חיבוק קיבלנו האשמות. במקום תודה קיבלנו שתיקה. לא נתתם לנו להגיב, לא נתתם לנו להסביר. עשיתם עלינו משפט שדה מול המצלמות, כאילו כבר החלטתם מי אשם. אבל תדעו, אנחנו לא נשתוק. נמשיך להילחם על הצדק בשביל עצמנו, בשביל החברים שלנו, בשביל המשפחות שלנו, בשביל כל מי שיצא עם מדים והגן על הבית.
You guys get the point there. There isn't a translation there for you. I'm so sorry about that. But that's the terror right there. Not the people in Gaza. That's the terror right there. One of them went on to channel 12 News. Let me come forward here. The video in question, this guy here. The soldier from Unit 100 that assaulted a Palestinian detainee was dismissed from the reserves for appearing on TV, revealed his identity, and said, "The days of us staying silent are over. We will stand for truth, and we are here for our comrades." We're starting right about here because you can see the captions here. And there are also bad events that are happening from within. This is one of the soldiers that assaulted that guy.
רעות אשר נושבות מבפנים. עלינו להתחזק ולהתקרב ולהבין ולהתאחד.
He said we must strengthen ourselves, unite, get closer in order to win this war.
כדי לנצח במלחמה הזאת. אנחנו לא מתכוונים לשתוק. נגמרו הימים שהפסק.
He said we do not intend to shut up. The days that we have stopped and we are fighting will end.
ואנחנו שותקים. נגמרו. אנחנו נעמוד על האמת. ואנחנו נילחם עליה. ואנחנו כאן בשביל החברים שלנו.
He said we will continue to fight for truth and we are here for our friends.
ואני מבקש מכל עם ישראל, יום ראשון, בשעה 4 בצהריים, בית ליד, תבואו לתמוך בנו.
Then he was asking people, the friends of Israel, to come and support them. Don't he look like a demon? Because you see, they don't see them as people. They don't see Palestinians as human. They see them as vile. They see them as animals. And that's how they treat them. It's disgusting, isn't it? Wait for the crazier part. The other part about this that is like cuckoo bananas, the woman who was the ex-top lawyer, that the one who leaked that video, she was the one who was reprimanded, not the soldiers who assaulted the Palestinian man. Israeli military's ex-top lawyer arrested over leak of video allegedly showing Palestinian detainee abuse. So she's the one that was reprimanded, not those guys. It goes on to say here, this top lawyer of the Israeli military has been arrested as a political showdown deepens over the leaking of a video that allegedly shows severe abuse of a Palestinian detainee by Israeli soldiers. Notice how they word this. It's severe abuse, right? Severe abuse. But they had no problem using the sexual assault, like the sexual the rape story. Remember how they were all running that through like corporate media and they had no evidence with that? But with this, you actually have an actual video and they're saying abuse. They're not saying sexually assault. That is a way to basically, in my opinion, to minimize what Israel is doing to the Palestinian peoples. So they'll exaggerate what Hamas has done and they'll minimize what the IDF is doing. Goes on to say here, this is her here, Majgen Yifat Tamir Yerushamali resigned as the military advocate general of the IDF last week, saying she took full responsibility for the leak. On Sunday, the story took a darker turn when she was reported as missing, with the police mounting an hours-long search for her on a beach north of Tel Aviv. She was subsequently found alive and well, police said, but was then taken into custody. The fallout came from that leaked video, and it's intensifying by the day. So apparently she's the one that leaked the video. Here's the video. We're not going to play it, obviously, because it's not something we want to play. But this is the video in question. You can find it very easily on social media, on X, formerly known as Twitter. That's the video. And what you see during this video is that multiple soldiers come in and out, and there's a Palestinian man here, and they brutally assault him. At one point, and again, at one point, they bring in a dog. And they have their shields held up. So these shields they have here, that was to hide their faces. I got to tell you guys again, this is a sick society full of sick people. There's no other way around that for me. Sick society full of sick people. That's the video that was leaked. And that woman, she leaked it And she's the one that is being held accountable, not the soldiers who sexually assaulted the man. Muhammad said here, the victim of the Israel's gang assault on camera has been identified. I'll withhold his name until he speaks on the record. IDF soldiers, I'm gonna be careful with this, but IDF soldiers assaulted him so violently until they exploded his intestines and ruptured his rectum. That's how sick these people are. He underwent 20 surgical operations, colostomy, urostomy, and is still suffering from medical complications until now. Israel released him 3 weeks ago without him ever being charged or tried. They likely released him so he wouldn't be able to testify at court against his rapists who are still at large. The victim is now fearful for his life. He could be killed in any Israeli strike to cover up this atrocity. The IDF top lawyer who opened a sham investigation into this incident a year ago has just been fired, disgraced, detained, and is herself now being investigated. Her only reason for launching a probe into this incident is because this one was caught on camera and the victim was hospitalized with a detailed medical record, so she started her investigation to prevent the ICC from intervening. And that's Israel. And that's who Ben Shapiro supports. Officer Tatum, Mark Levin, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer. This is who they support. And it's not a few people. It is a sick, disgusting society. Because when you don't believe that the Palestinian people are humans, when you don't believe that, you're not going to treat them like they're humans. Sick, disgusting, disgusting society. I sincerely hope, like, I got to tell you guys, like, I sincerely hope that particular incident gets more attention. And I'm like, corporate media ain't really trying to touch it like that, but I'm hoping it gets more attention because that's on video. Now, you still got all these people out there talking about Hamas put babies in ovens. That had been debunked multiple times. No video footage of that. But you have video footage of this. And I don't hear any of those pundits talking about it. I don't hear Scott Jennings at the CNN roundtable talking about this. As much as he points fingers at Hamas, I don't hear Scott Jennings talking about this at all. I don't hear Ben Shapiro talking about this incident. I don't hear any of these people talking about this incident, which is on video. A sick, disgusting society. As I said before, anyone supporting or defending Israel, that is what you are supporting. A sick, disgusting society. Point blank. Point blank. It is 8:55, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time to start election night. We getting into election night? Yeah. I see JB's here. Amani's here. Hey, gang, gang. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and hop into it. We are going to go ahead and dive into the election night portion of the show. Polls are about to close, and we're actually going to start with New Jersey. This New Jersey race. Let's go ahead and bring everybody in. Amani, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
JB, welcome.
Good to see you. Nice to meet you, Miss Amani.
Hey, nice to meet you too.
I thought Eric was coming, but I don't know. He turned on his camera. Maybe he's not coming. Maybe he changed his mind. I don't know. Okay. There he is. I think you're muted, Eric.
There I is. Do we want to wrap up super chats before we move on? I'll have to read them sooner or later. Anyways.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Mountain. Check that and another 10 towards talent in turquoise. Thanks for the education and excellent investigation investigative detective journalism. Big ups to those in Jamaica after Hurricane Melissa. One love. Thank you. And thank you, Ace Play. Men and women are raped, or they use dogs to and recorded to humiliate them. 50% of the IDF is gay. Sean King talked about this. Sean King.
Not sure what this dude's going on about, but
Oh, maybe he means Sean King, the Sean King that worked with Bernie's. That's Sean King. I don't know.
anyways, moving on.
Okay. Let's get into election night, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start with New Jersey. We have two people here at the bottom, Imani and my comrade JB Font, who are from New Jersey. I think Imani is still in New Jersey. JB is now in Florida. But I got to show you this. Something is happening in New Jersey. Maybe you guys can explain this to me. I've never seen this before. But for those who are not aware, in the New Jersey race for governor, Jack Citarelli and Chitterelli?
Chitterelli.
That's how it really is Chitterelli?
Not shit, chit. Like
Chitterelli. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Jack Chitterelli and Mickey Sherrill, the polls are showing that they are tied at 44%. And it's also showing that when you look at independents, that Jack has 59% plus 19, and Sherrill has 30%. So I got to ask, I'm going to start with you, Imani. What is happening in New Jersey?
Sure. So I wanted to say Mikey Sherrill as well. This is a difficult race for names. But I mean, listen, I will say the polls were showing them neck and neck. And last time Jack ran against Murphy, it was very closer than it absolutely should have been, because everyone forgets Jack is a stop the steal Republican. So like really, he's really out there. He was an anti-vaxxer. I mean, really, really out there. And he got close to beating Murphy, which is, I mean, embarrassing. But tonight, it actually looks like a lot of folks are saying this. The polls were saying it was neck and neck. Tonight, it actually looks like Mikey has actually pulled ahead pretty significantly. There's still quite a bit of the vote left to count. But I mean, ultimately, what it comes down to is this in New Jersey. There's historical issues and there's new issues. Historically, New Jersey's overwhelmingly Democratic as far as who is registered as a Democrat, right? Overwhelmingly, most people are. However, a lot of those Democrats will flip-flop when it comes to local elections or statewide elections. Now, why is that? A lot of those people who are registered as Democrats, they come from like the old white union stock, right? So back in the day when, you know, Democrats were way more pro-union and all those union members were getting into the Democratic machine, they registered as Democrats, right? But their actual politics are a lot more to the right than that. So they will tend to flip-flop. So historically, that's what's going on as far as, you know, the Republicans looking like strong numbers. And then I would say recently, you just have a lot of people who are just fed up with politics as usual. They're fed up with the same names. They're fed up with the same, you know, really just boring platforms, right? Like people want to be inspired. People want to have the inspiration that they felt, you know, Obama 2008, Bernie 2016 and 2020, AOC the 2018, right? Like Mamdani now, right? But people want to feel that excitement. And it's just Mikey Show was not the person to deliver that excitement, although she is doing much better than I thought and probably than most people thought.
So yeah, that was just surprising to me. I was surprised by that, but you brought up something about the unions and about labor, and I think that's important for people to understand as well. I'm gonna pivot here to JB. JB, I know you're not in New Jersey anymore, but you're from there originally. Were you surprised by this? By those numbers for New Jersey?
I can't really say because I'll be honest with you, I've been in Florida most of my life. So as far as the New Jersey, the dynamics as far as the politics are concerned, I'm not as aware and up to date as somebody like Miss Imani is. However, one thing I do know is that a lot of times, you know, when it comes to New Jersey. It is notoriously expensive, especially when it comes to like the taxation. And so there's a lot of things that are extremely expensive. New Jersey is probably, if I think it's the most populous state in the entire country. As far as per square mile. And so New Jersey has a huge amount of people, and they are really tired of just the as Miss Imani said, the politics as usual, especially when it comes to New Jersey is one of the most expensive states as well. And so jobs is a big, huge factor. You have a lot of people who also they live in New York, but then they work in New York and they live in New Jersey. Or if you're from South Jersey, like I am, you have some people who work in Philadelphia, but then they come back to New Jersey to live, and then vice versa. And so it is to the point right now where the cost of living crisis is hitting so many people that they're looking for a way out. They're looking for someone to be able to give some type of relief within that state. And so, unfortunately, it is really just a microcosm of what's going on across the country, especially in different states like Florida. You also have, this happening in other states like California. So the cost of living is really the most major factor. And unfortunately and one thing I noticed about a lot of Democrats is they speak more in the abstract versus the concrete. And so that was something that acuity they should have taken with somebody like a Mamdani, but they failed on that. Or they may take those cues, here and there, but they're not as hard hitting on it like a Bernie Sanders or a Mamdani was. And so, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, let's look at it now because Eric has the numbers up as they are coming in right now. If we look at New Jersey right now, it shows Sherelle at 56.7% and Jack. I'm just going to say Jack. Jack is at 42.8% with 41% of the votes counted. We're not going to get to New York just yet. I know people looking over there, but we'll get there in just a second because I want to bring Jose in for that one. Eric, what are your thoughts
that looks
here?
like a win for Sherelle. That sure looks like a win for. I know it's only 43%, but that looks done to me. I'm surprised they're not calling it.
It depends on what counties are in and what counties are not, I would say. But yeah, it's a good point.
It looks like, sorry if I cut in here, looks like there are some left for Jack. I agree that Mikey's probably going to win this, but now my question is by how much is she going to win? That's my question. Is it going to be by 0.5, right? And the reason why I find that as a point of interest is because this is a bellwether, or people are going to try and use it as a bellwether for 2026, especially those who are pushing the notion of, we got to get more centrist. We got to stop talking about all the woke stuff. We got to all that jazz. People are going to be using this for. And so, I want to see how close this actually is versus say Zoran Mamdani, excuse me, how close that is. Because I think we'll be able to, make a counter argument that no, people are more inspired by XYZ. And then there's also the third argument, which is you can't tell. These are off-year elections, and there's a whole lot of things that can happen within a year. Plus, there's a whole lot of a different atmosphere when everyone isn't focused on just a small amount of places.
Yeah, that's why I don't have as many to cover this time around, because we don't have as many races because it's an off-season election year. Yeah. But I want to bring in Jose. I can bring you in when you're ready. Anything you want to add, Eric? Because I got a couple of videos I want to show you guys too. They're kind of funny.
So we got Abigail Spanberger has been declared the winner in her race. So big win for the CIA there. And the early numbers in New York look to me like Mamdani's got that wrapped up, but we'll get to that.
All right, so we got Jose. Jose, what's going on? Introduce yourself.
Hey, hi. Thanks for having me on. My name's Jose Vega. I'm a congressional candidate running for Congress in the Bronx, currently battling a cold. But
me too.
I'm here and I'm happy to be. The reason I got on early, you told me 9:15, but I was like, no way, because the numbers are going to come in at 9 o'clock. I had to see your reactions. I wanted to I didn't even I was like, I have to see what Sabrina's going to say or do with this. I mean, 51% at 36% results counted. I mean, that was great. I've been on the ground in the Bronx. I was editing a video. I was on the ground for early voting. I voted on Saturday, and I was there on the ground Saturday, and I was putting together a video, just like getting people's reactions, And despite the fact that Mamdani looks like he may win the Bronx, it's still a very low voter turnout. I was looking at those numbers. It's higher than usual, but it's still very low. And I still did get a lot of people who weren't super enthusiastic about voting in general, but he did get a lot more youth in the Bronx to come out than in previous generations. And I was generally surprised at the support that Cuomo was still getting in the Bronx, even today. There were people I was talking to, like a nice elder, I was out campaigning for myself, and there was a nice lady who asked me what I thought about the mayoral race. And I said, I think that, out of all the options, Mamdani's the best. And she said, you don't think Cuomo, because he can get things done? I was like, wow, you really do think Cuomo is a viable option?
It's like, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Let me show you guys this.
Get things done.
For people who are not aware, Blakely did a really good job talking about this. Just to give you an idea of where you would be headed, right? Donald Trump and Elon Musk endorsed Andrew Cuomo. So that the billionaires endorsed Andrew Cuomo. So that lets you know who he stands with. And Blakely made a short video about this. Check it out.
In case you needed any more reasons to vote for Zohran Mamdani tomorrow, Elon Musk is saying not to vote for him. I mean, I don't know how to make it more simple, folks. Billionaires are the enemy of the working class. 26 billionaires has spent more than $22 million trying to defeat Mamdani. And that is just the money we can trace. And when I say regular, I mean you too, like middle class kind of couple that makes like $250,000 a year. Don't get it twisted. They don't want you to have childcare either. Wealthy and corporate landlords have given millions to Cuomo's campaign, as well as corporations that want to hurt workers' rights, like DoorDash. And of course, don't forget that coveted Trump endorsement, with Trump saying that he would vote for Cuomo if he lived in New York City still. Ask yourself who benefits from a Cuomo mayoralship besides Trump. So we got the landlords, the corporations, the billionaire class, and Israel, of course. All of the support that Cuomo has is from people and institutions that want this city to stay unaffordable and remain a playground for the billionaire class. They don't want regular people being able to live here. Vote for Zohran Mamdani tomorrow and send the message that our city is not for sale.
Yeah, and this is the way I kind of look at it. I do want to get you guys' take on this. I'll go back to you, Imani. My whole thing is that, I have my critiques of the Democratic Party as well. I told people I think Zohran might govern a little bit more like a moderate than like, as far as he wants to go, just because the governor has to approve some of these things he wants to do. But my whole thing was with this particular race, you have Andrew Cuomo, who's a sex pest and killed all those people in the nursing home, and a hardcore staunch Zionist. And then you had, Zohran, who he has wavered on some things, like he wavered or he apologized about calling the NYPD racist, which I didn't agree with that. I think he should have just kept it what it was. But most people I talked to in New York said they're tired of their rent increasing. And that is their biggest concern. They're tired of, the unaffordability of the city, but they don't have enough money to save to get out of New York City and move somewhere cheaper. Imani, I want to bring you in your take about this. Is that what you think a lot of it is, just the affordability factor?
It's hard to say. I wouldn't hop right on that immediately. I mean, I do think that's obviously big on people's minds. The economy is terrible right now. But I also think just Cuomo, I mean, for all the reasons you named, was also just a terrible candidate, right? Like, for all intents and purposes, like, moderates didn't put up their quote unquote best. You know what I mean? Like, to give an example of this, imagine if they put up a good-looking young white male who was very charismatic and like an Obama figure, right? Like these numbers might be different, but they put up Andrew Cuomo, who, you know, is extremely disliked, had a scandal, right? Like who's older as well. A lot of people want to see younger talent. This might have been a little bit of closer race if they did something like that. So it's hard to say. I wouldn't like bank and just say, well, it's obviously that everybody is just, you know, just mad about this. I do think in order for me to be comfortable saying that, there would have to be a little bit more evenness in kind of the brand or the vibe of the candidates for me to be able to say really which one is going which way. I just think in this case, Mamdani has a really, really great brand, and Cuomo has a really, really god-awful brand. We don't really have like much of an evening with them.
Well, I'm going to bring it to you, JB, in just a second, and I'll circle back to Jose. I want to show you guys what was said about Andrew Cuomo recently. So Zoran did a number of appearances within the past, I'd say 24 hours. Listen to this one.
We knew in the primary that Andrew Cuomo was being funded by the same billionaire donors that gave us Donald Trump's second term. I did not, however, anticipate Andrew Cuomo going from being Donald Trump's puppet to being so nakedly his parrot. What he has said in these last few days, these are words that should shock the conscience of New Yorkers. He has said that diversity is a weakness, while forgetting which black host of the TV show he was on he was actually speaking to. He has laughed and agreed when a radio show host said that I would cheer on another 9/11. He has stood alongside the current mayor of the city as that mayor said that he was endorsing Andrew Cuomo to stop a movement that was burning churches in Nigeria, to stop New York City from becoming Europe. And as Deputy Majority Leader Mike Gianari said, for Andrew Cuomo's closing message to be a call for Republicans to support him, it shows what we have long known, but what he was able to hide while he was in Albany, which is that Andrew Cuomo is interested more in his own power than in living up to the ideals that make so many New Yorkers proud to be Democrat.
Interesting things there. We've seen a lot of, I'm passing it to you, JB, and we'll just ask everyone to keep your responses relatively short. We have Roger Meadows has just joined us as well, also New Yorker. JB, the rampant Islamophobia that has come out during this race, from Donald Trump, from the Republican Party, and also from Democrats like Andrew Cuomo, also blatantly, Islamophobic comments. I think that actually that's helping Zoran. It's not going against him. What's your take on that?
I agree. What we black people has already known. We've known that just because they're liberal, just because they're Democrats, doesn't mean they're not racist, right? There's the covert versus the overt, right? And we've known for a long time that they were covert in the way that they held, their views. And I'm not saying this of all of them, but I'm saying a plurality of people who subscribe to the Democratic Party, especially those who are in elected positions, have either some racist views or just some bigoted or anti-Black views that they've always had, right? So it's not any surprise when it comes to them having Islamophobic views. Look at how many Democrats actually were on board for the war on terror that happened after 9/11, about 20 years ago. So many of them also feel the same way. And one thing that a lot of people aren't thinking about is there's a lot of Black Muslims as well within New York, within New Jersey, and in Pennsylvania, particularly in Philadelphia, where a lot of my family's from. I am the grandson of a Black Muslim. So here's the problem. If you're being Islamophobic, you're also blanketing and covering over different groups as well that you don't mean to actually alienate, but you are alienating. So it's no surprise to me. I just hope that people aren't surprised.
People forget that. People forget that when they're coming after Muslims, there's Black Muslims too. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? It's something I noticed. I'm going to pull in these numbers here so people can see how that race is going right now. I wish I could move these, but apparently you can't. Anyway, over here, New York mayor right now, Zoran is at 50.2% and Andrew Cuomo is at 40.8%. Let me drop this down here to be fair so we can see the other ones too. Excuse me. Curtis Lewa is at 8.2%. There's some write-ins. Eric Adams is still there for some reason. Why is Eric Adams? I'm passing it to you, Jose. Then I'll bring you in, Roger. Why is Eric Adams still there?
Because he dropped out after the ballots were already finalized. That's why Eric Adams was there. To your point also about the Black Muslims that are in New York City, I got to speak at a mosque a couple of weeks ago that was primarily West African, and they spoke Mandingo, which apparently has its roots from the Mali Empire, in that region of, it goes back to the year 800. And that was just like a learning experience, because I spoke with the community leaders there. I spoke with the imams there that told me about where the Islamic influences come from in that region of the continent of Africa. And that was just like amazing to see, because there's this whole subculture of Muslims in the Bronx, and that was like, wow, this goes to show you just more the diversification of New York City as a whole and where these communities are. And so for me, that was just an eye-opening experience. And just one comment on the mayoral race as a whole. And I mean, what this means at this point, Mamdani clearly took it. It's just if he can hold the 50% majority, which I really hope he can. I think what this shows is he was able to go up against a machine that has long dominated New York City politics, of the boss Tweed machine that, can basically decide elections before they happen. And I really do think it goes back to that moment in the debate where all the candidates were asked, where are you going to go to after it's come over? Where are you going to go to? What's the first country you're going to visit after you become mayor? And everyone was, like running up and down and falling over saying Israel. And he says, actually, I'm just going to be here. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be working for the people here. I'm going to make sure that people can actually afford to live in the city again. And, the mainstream Democrat establishment thought that was going to be the end of Mamdani, but actually it wasn't. And he ended up winning the primary. And now this, I think, may be a mortal blow to that New York City establishment. I read a book recently called 50 Years a Democrat, which was written by Hewlin Jack, who was the first Black borough president of Manhattan. And he talks about how he actually had worked with that machine to get elected, but the moment he went against it, that's when they got him out. So
there you go. That makes sense. Let's bring in Roger. Roger, who friend of the show. People see Roger a lot on Call In. Roger, you have to unmute yourself. Roger does rideshare service. What have you heard from customers, Roger, in New York about this race?
Honestly, they're like, whatever. you gotta something, I like to look at. I'm fascinated with looking at historical data of election turnout. And here's something, and Jose touched on it a little bit. So in New York State, just the state as a whole, there have always been somewhere around, I'm just going to use this century, this millennium. There's always been about 13 to 14 million registered voters in a population of somewhere between 18 million and 19 million, right? So the presidency gets the highest voter turnout, and it always comes to half. Okay, so like I said, 13 to 14 million registered, and the presidency usually total number across the state is like in between 7 and 8 million. The highest was 2020 when that broke records, and that was like a little bit over 8 million. Gubernatorial, it drops down to 6 million, so a little under half. 6 million plus or minus 200,000. But something that I noticed with New York City, no matter how many registered voters they have, like I looked at this since Mayor Bloomberg first term, the percentage turnout is always in the 20%, except for when Bloomberg was first elected, it was like 39.1%. But every mayoral election after that, it was ranging from 22 to 27%. So it's like the same people are voting, maybe not the same exact people, but it'll be like, let's say registered voters in like when Bloomberg was running, right? His first time, it's like 3.75 million registered voters, and like 1.4 million came out. Now, the number of registered voters has been growing since then. Right now, I just looked it up. It said that New York City has a record of registered voters of 5.3 million. So I'm curious to see what the ultimate turnout is for this election. But
yeah,
because
5.3 million people aren't voting.
Yeah, but I seen it bounce from looking from the gubernatorial elections, presidential election, mayoral elections. It's always been bouncing between 4 million and 5 million registered voters, but the same amount of people come out to vote, 1 million people.
So new people are registering to vote in New York, but they're not voting?
I know this, in 2020, the state passed the ADR law, automatic voter registration. Okay, so what that means is, if you were never registered to vote before, and I think Massachusetts has this, and the moment that you interact with the state agency, in this case, the DMV in our state, they automatically register you to vote for you. And they put you in the independent, no party column. So we don't call it independent. The government name is no party. So that's, but even before that was in 2020. Even before that, the registration kept going up, but the amount of people that New Yorkers who vote is like 1 million. In gubernatorial elections, it's like 2 million. In presidential elections, it gets closer to 3 million.
So let's bring this in, because Professor Zinkas just said tonight the turnout in NYC is 2 million, which is almost double than usual, and 17% who voted in early voting were first-time voters in a mayoral election. Wow.
Okay. So this is going to break records, but it's still under half. There's 5.3 million registered voters in New York City. Even though this is better than they doubled their turnout, but it's still So either that tells you this. That's three things that tells me: people moved and didn't unregister, or they moved. They told the Board of Elections, "Hey, unregister me," and they didn't. I remember Larry was talking about that. Or people are dying and it didn't get to the Board of Elections yet. Or people are like, I'm not voting for these clowns. So that's probably what it is.
Okay, quick checkup here. These numbers are coming in fast, you guys. Just to show you, Virginia, Spamberger got it for Virginia. Miki Cheryl got it for New Jersey. They already
called
it.
that one. That's new. Yeah, he's called it.
Yeah, they called Virginia, and then when we get to New York, that's not called yet, but it says 52% of the votes are in. Right now, it has Mondami at 49.6 and Cuomo at 41.5. Curtis Lee was still in the 8 percentage. While we wait for that, I do want to show you guys something funny, and then I'll bring Amani back in for this one. The Climate Defiance group, they have been making these videos making fun of Andrew Cuomo. I have to show this to you guys. This is so funny. You guys got to see. I got 2 of them for you. Here's the first one.
You're making everyone here feel uncomfortable.
I am Cuomo. I know I make people feel uncomfortable. That is my entire brand. He's right. I am Andrew Cuomo. Okay. I am the real Andrew Cuomo. And if you are a billionaire, I will support your rights. I will support you. If you are an oil exec, I will support you no matter what. This man is not telling the truth. The press is here for me. They want to hear from me. Andrew Cuomo, please, Fox 5. Fox 5, don't put your hands in my face. I am a mayoral candidate. Although I lost the Democratic primary, I will not take no for an answer. I do not take no for an answer, ever. not when it is the electorate, not when it is a woman in my office. I don't do that.
The joke is over.
The joke has only begun.
Do you see this crowd?
Yes, do you see this crowd? All 15 New Yorkers have come to support me. Wait a second. Wait, come here. Come here. Come here. Let me, come on.
Yeah, give me a little kiss.
I'm Italian.
Give me a little kiss. Give me a little kiss.
Scaring children. We're scaring the children.
James, that's
This is
what I was trying
Italian.
to show you.
Imani, more thoughts there. It's still baffling to me that Andrew Cuomo, with his record, that he's still in this race. Thoughts?
Well, actually, Sabby, do you mind switching the screen back to the numbers again? I just want to show folks something to highlight a little bit what I was saying before about how this doesn't really tell us much about the future. So if you look at these numbers right now, and obviously, votes are still coming in. I'm talking about New York. I'll talk about Jersey in a second. If you look at these numbers, roughly, if Curtis Sliwa and the rest of those numbers went where Andrew Cuomo is, this would be a much tighter race, if not a different race altogether, right? And this is what I'm saying, it's hard to say whether it's just like, oh, well, this is just obviously going to be how New York is moving forward. That would be great. But I'm a leftist. Anybody who knows me knows I've been a leftist before it was cool, back when it was really hard to be a leftist, especially being a Black leftist. So I would love for New York to be going in that direction. However, I am also a realist and I like to be very precise. And if Eric Adams had dropped out earlier, if Curtis Sliwa had dropped out, and if there was let's call it a moderate Mamdani, right, where it's somebody who's young, good looking, charismatic, this might be a tighter race. And this is what I want folks to be careful about, right? Celebrate, of course, but also don't say that, oh, this obviously means this in the future. Don't get lax, right? Keep pushing, keep pushing. Because if you add up those numbers and do the math on those numbers, some things could have gone a different way and this would be much tighter. On Mikey and Jack, like I said before, I'm surprised that she pulled it out. I'll be honest. I had her losing this. I didn't have her losing it by much. I probably like 1 or 2 percentage points, but I definitely had her losing. Now I'm just interested to see how tight it is or isn't that win, because I think that's gonna dictate a lot of the banter of, oh yes, this is why we need to have boring army white women be the face of the party now, and we got to follow that from here till kingdom come. Then next year's going to come, we'll try it and have major losses. I will also say about New Jersey, one thing I think looking back at those polls before, I will say I think a lot of people anticipated Passaic County going more red, because last time during 2024, they actually went for Trump. Passaic County flipped and went for Trump. However, the thing that people are mysteriously silent about, is that Passaic County has a very, very large Arab population and a very, very large Muslim population. And a lot of those people voted third party, or they stayed home and didn't vote at all. And so that's why 2024 went to Trump, not because what a lot of people are saying, oh, people just love moderates, people are really secretly conservative. No, people stayed home. That was like an anomaly that happened because Kamala was running on genocide partially. And so, I do think some folks got that county seriously wrong in their projections. But I will say I'm surprised that Mikey pulled it out. I want to see where these numbers land at the end of the day.
The numbers just moved again, you guys. It just jumped. 69% of the votes counted. Now Zoran is at 50% and Andrew Cuomo is at 41.4.
Sabrina.
Yes, 1 second, Roger. Let me, I got a system. So let's go back to JB and then we'll come back to you. JB, we got one more here from, I wish Professor Zinkas was on here as well, because he said something here I want to show you guys and get your take on this one. Professor Zinkas said, My aunt was 75 when she died from the pandemic in April 2020 that she caught in a nursing rehab because Andrew Cuomo ordered hospitals to send those patients into nursing homes. She died alone. Family was not allowed in the room. She was one of 15,000. Fuck all the way off, Andrew Cuomo. New York doesn't want you. And this was what, for people who forget, this was what Cuomo was saying. Whether a person died in a nursing home or a hospital, who cares? They died. See, I remember like all of this, but now he did this last minute apology before the votes came in. I want you guys to hear what he said on Fox News. He did a last minute apology for that now.
Worst. Nobody knew what we were dealing with. I had the best health experts from around the globe giving us advice. We followed the best advice. We followed the federal guidance. And people died in a horrific way. There were no visitors allowed into nursing homes. And I apologize for any family that lost a loved one during that time. It was on my watch. And I understand how terrible it was.
Yeah, we really were first and worst. I remember calling my family down in South Carolina saying, Mom and Dad, do not go to that party. You don't understand what's happening here. Y'all need to stay away from your friends right now and stay at home. People are.
No, they weren't. Anyway, I'm sorry. They're so full of it. But you guys see this last minute ditch effort that Andrew Cuomo did, passing it to you, JB, and then to Jose. Why make this apology now? All these years went by.
He's desperate. Look, Andrew Cuomo had what, about 4 years to make that apology? Around 4 years? And he didn't? And so now, right before an election, he decides to make the apology? Pretty convenient for him. And so the thing is, like, ultimately, he's not sorry that it happened. He's sorry he got caught. And so now it's coming to bite him back in the ass. That's exactly why.
Well said there, Jose.
Well, I actually wanted to echo what Imani was just saying about, how this actually isn't a blowout. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers and like, she's right. I mean, just think about the amount of work that the Mamdani campaign was doing. That's with the Democratic nomination. That's with another candidate there splitting the conservative Republican vote, and that's also with a lot of the media, social media on your side, as well, a lot of the young people on your side. They're still going to win, but that was like a lot of work. And think about Cuomo. Cuomo's campaign was like flailing and failing, and those are still very good numbers for, just like, and that was like with paying people, that was paying for AI advertisements, right? So it goes to show you, like what Imani is saying, it's still going to be a struggle for future progressive candidates who think that this just means that they're going to take it all the way now, and that Mamdani's endorsements for any of these future races for governor, Senate, whatever, are going to make a difference. It might, but it just goes to show you that like it's still going to be a fight. But, I think what Zoran did showed that you're going to have to work that hard every time, at least for the next few elections, if you truly want to get money out of the elections and out of the races.
That's a really good point. He was everywhere all the time, like literally everywhere. The first time I saw him was when he was on Bad Faith podcast, and that was before the primary. That was before
looks
he
like
won
AP
the primary.
has called it officially.
Okay, do you guys think this is a wide margin? They called it
75% in. We got Mandami at 50.4, Cuomo at 41.3, Sliwa at 7.5.
Oh, Eric, can you look and find and see if they? I got to find Cuomo's concession speech. I just want to laugh.
Well, I got CNN. I got CNN in the background here, so I'll see if they're going to it.
Okay, cool. So they
We'll keep an
already
eye out.
called it. Guys, look how fast they move. 75% of the votes are counted.
Numbers don't lie.
Calling it for Zoran Mandami. That's 9%. Roger Meadows, you're next. That's 9%. What do you think about that?
Oh, okay. Wow. That's amazing. I wanted to I just wanted to briefly say something real quick about Jose. Did you vote for the ballot measure?
Yes, you mean the ones on the back?
Yes.
I voted no, 2-6.
Exactly. It pretty much there was a ballot measure that said, okay, so in our state constitution, we got this thing called the Forever Wild Clause, where there is about 2.3 point something million acres that are to remain untouched. And it's just for the animals. It's not a nature preserve. It's just no development. That's not even an amendment. That's just intertwined in our state constitution that they got through a state constitutional convention back in the 1930s. Okay. So there was some environmentalists who was driving like upstate and they saw some logs. It's like, who cut these logs down? They're doing development here. And then they found out that there's some company that's trying to trim around the edges and they want to have like the World Olympics. I guess maybe they're talking about the Winter Olympics or something like that. So they had no choice but to put a measure on the ballot because that's in the Constitution. So the Forever Wild Clause protects all of that. So like I said, it's like over 2 or 3 million acres. So that's, to be honest with you, I mean, I don't live in New York City. I live out here in Long Island. So suburban politics is boring as hell. But that was the only thing I filled out. So, yeah. So I'm interested to know how that, like what's the lowdown on that. I didn't check the numbers or whatever the case is.
Yeah, we can check the ballot measures as well. I do want to show you guys something that was said this morning. Something Zoran said this morning about BDS, because that question was raised. So listen to this really quick.
I've talked to Jewish New Yorkers who like your message of affordability. They think it's the right message, but then they go back and they say, well, he supports BDS. He won't condemn the language of globalize the intifada. He seemed to play both sides after October 7th in his initial statement. They're deeply worried that you have some animosity for Jewish people and for the state of Israel. How do you respond to that?
Look, I think critiques of the state of Israel are critiques of a government, as opposed to critiques of a people and of a faith. And my job is to represent every single New Yorker, and I will do so no matter their thoughts and opinions on Israel and Palestine, of which millions of New Yorkers have very strong views, and I'm one of them.
Would BDS be the policy of your administration as mayor?
I've said that I would support and have supported nonviolent movements to bring about compliance with international law. And where this mayor has violated and looked to violate that kind of law, I bring us back into compliance.
So yes.
No, I'm talking about compliance. Okay. Right? And I've said that I support BDS because this is a movement that is looking for that kind of compliance. We haven't seen it.
Okay. That was a big one there on BDS. And I think we do have a final call. Mateo said Mondami CBS winner. CBS. Let me check that one. But then I was going to go back to these were the odds earlier today. According to Polymarket, odds on today's election races, they predicted 92% for Zoran Mondami, 83% for Sherrill in New Jersey, and 98% for Spanberger in Virginia. So Polymarket's odds were
bookies be
pretty
knowing.
good. I guess so. I guess the bookies are right. Huey said Cuomo's numbers are very concerning, given his record. Yeah, I mean it. We'll take a peek back at it again and see if it changed any. The fact that it was still 41%, I think that's what Huey might be referring to. Yeah, the Zionists, like a lot of them are going to come out and support Cuomo. But then I also just think that a lot of people did not vote, right? So we'll have to look at those final numbers to see who came out to vote. And there's one more, because I am going to laugh at Cuomo, but there's one more I want to show you guys. It was another one from Climate Defiance where they approached him as well, and they said he was slapping fannies. Listen to this one.
Sometimes you just ignore people.
Killer Cuomo! Andrew Cuomo, you don't represent the future of the
Just
city.
ignore. special deputy.
Andrew Cuomo, you don't represent the people.
Like it's selfish here, and it's rolling. I appreciate how you like create bipartisan consensus of how you're a sexual predator, and how you're slapping fannies and killing grannies. Thank you.
And how you come on, stay and talk to me. Stay and talk to me. All
right, let's hear it.
I appreciate that you don't know what you are talking about, and that doesn't bother you. You do well being ignorant.
I believe woman.
Thank you.
I went into the event, and they were like, this woman is not supposed to be here. Get her out.
No. This woman is not here for the campaign. Take her out. No. You're out of here.
No,
Go. No. You're.
Okay.
I met you. You protested in
Okay.
Queens. Get out. Get out.
Okay.
Get out right now. Get out.
I was only in there for like 30 seconds. I go outside. I stand on the sidewalk. There's this guy who's like, Islamic, phobic, sexist party right there. And I joined him. I was like, yes. They come out. They see me. They're like, you whore, get off our property right now. And I was like, I'm on the public sidewalk, actually.
They called you a whore?
Yes.
Stop coming here.
Okay, I'm not going inside.
Get out of here.
I'm not
Get
going
out of here. You
inside.
tried to get inside. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here, psychopath. Get out of here.
Don't call me a whore,
Get
guys,
out of
please.
here, psychopath. Get out of here.
Stop.
Get out of here, psychopath.
Okay,
Get out of
you
here.
can stop
Follow you the whole
yelling at
fucking
me.
way. Get
You
to the
can stop
subway.
yelling
Go
at
to
me.
the fucking
You can
subway.
stop
You were
yelling
yelling at us.
in my
Go to
face.
the fucking subway. You yelled
Okay.
at us. Go to the
You can
fucking
stop yelling in my
You
face.
yelled at us. Go to the fucking subway. Go to the fucking subway. Get out of here.
Bye. So I start walking away. She's following me. She's running after me. She's like, get on the fuck. She turns the fucking corner with me, runs after me, chases me down the side. No, literally, like, what the fuck? Don't chase after me. What are you doing? Bro, what are you doing? Stop. Bye.
So this is like that was Cuomo's staff that treated her like that.
Shocking.
I don't know what to say. But I did
I
want to
love how
show that to
Cuomo,
you guys.
Cuomo was there thinking he was gonna like talk that guy out of it, or like it's like these brothers are like they think they can just like verbally like just force people to listen to them and take their point of view. It's like,
He said slapping fannies and killing grannies. That's what he said.
you don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh.
I'm Italian.
So it's 80% now in, guys. Anybody making a speech yet or not, Eric?
No. Just,
Okay, it's 80
just Axelrod. Yapping on
80%
CNN.
of the votes have been counted. 50.6% for Mandami. Again, it's called Andrew. I just want to see the concession speech from Andrew Cuomo.
And
I want to see it so I can drop the beat.
And to this point of like how can he get 41%? I mean, you know, what I would say is maybe if Zoran Mandami had left the Democratic Party, because obviously you can run in this election as an independent, because we had two of them, and if he would have called out the corruption in both parties and been unapologetically independent, calling out their corruption, the billionaires, the whole system, then I think he might have got much bigger numbers. But I think people were wary, you know, that, oh, here's another Democrat, here's another Obama. So, you know, that's what I would say about it.
Well, what's this thing about the debate stage? Jose, how is it that so Curtis Sliwa wasn't really running as an independent. He was running as a Republican, but he was still
Well, he also had two lines too, just like Zoran, for example, wasn't just on Dems, he was also on Working Families Party. Right. Sliwa was on the Republican line, and he was also on some line called Protect the Animals line. You know, and Andrew Cuomo had the Save New York City line, and I don't remember what Eric Adams's line was. So Curtis Sliwa was running as an independent and a Republican, which is what you can do in New York. city. You get, like, for example, they didn't list there for Zoran his working family parties line, which I would be interested to see the numbers on that, right? Of the 50.5% of people that voted for Zoran, how many of those votes came in through the working families party line as opposed to just the Dem line? Because Zoran said himself that he voted for himself on the WFP line, not on the Dem line. And Sliwa voted for himself on his independent line as well, not on the Republican line.
No, but I think we need more candidates like Jose Vega who are saying, I'm not a Democrat, and the Democrats and the Republicans are corrupt.
Democrats and Republicans are corrupt.
That I think that stuff is a winning message.
The breakdown on CBS is different than the breakdown on AP, just FYI, guys. Something I just noticed, like on CBS, it says 49.6%, and it says over 677,000 votes.
Yeah.
So maybe
they're a little behind. They say 60% in. I think AP had 75%. So it may be a timing thing as well.
I'm using the New York Times one because it also has like the map, like by borough and like neighborhoods. And I'm looking at the neighborhood I live in, and I'm like surprised at these Cuomo numbers. I mean, it was, they all the neighborhoods in the Bronx basically did pull out for Zoran, but by little margins, not by a whole lot. So that's just something for me to know, because these are the people I'm going to be asking to vote for me. So, I got to really start thinking.
Oh.
So, I might have to go in the streets tomorrow and Thursday and just start asking people, like, so tell me, what was that about? Who did you vote for? Why did you vote for? Yeah.
I have the borough. I think I can bring it up here to show people what Jose is talking about, just to show you guys. The actual map. Let me make it smaller so people can see. Because I'm curious too, like where are we here? It looks like he did pretty good in the Bronx.
Yeah. If you scroll up, you can see by neighborhoods in these. Like you can break it down individually if you just highlight.
Upper East Side. I see what you mean. Yeah. Bed-Stuy, that's Brooklyn. I'm just trying to see the Bronx part.
I think
a ton of this would come down to the age too, older voters versus younger voters.
You can highlight on the mouse, like on the right side where the map is. If you move your mouse to the map, so you can then just move it up to the Bronx, and then you can just see, like, those numbers for Cuomo are like impressive for the Bronx, despite the fact, he won Pelham Bay. That's interesting.
Pelham Bay, Throgs Neck.
Yeah, those are pretty conservative areas of the Bronx.
City Island.
Wow.
Is this the wealthier part of the Bronx, Jose?
Yeah, those outer parts of the Bronx are wealthier. Yeah, like Riverdale is like really Zionist. That's also part of my district. Spoit and Dyeville, also very Zionist. Those definitely, check out. Interesting.
Some people may not realize just how big the Bronx is.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I'm not surprised by Staten Island. Staten Island's pretty conservative. So that one doesn't surprise me that Cuomo did so well there. But guys, what I will say is this. I think, and I'll come back and drop the beat later, but I think what Amani pointed out is something to pay attention to. Like, people may look at this and say, okay, well, that was, just great. But also keep in mind, this is New York City. And then also keep in mind that look at all the work he had to do. Like that's the thing I think a lot of, like, because I saw videos of him everywhere all the time, like meeting people on the street, meeting them like where they were, right? So look at all the work that he had to do. And to the point that she made about if Eric Adams had dropped out sooner, that could have changed things. Maybe we never know. I think Andrew Cuomo is a horrible person, not just a horrible candidate. I think he's a horrible person. And so for me, I was just like, Andrew Cuomo has to lose. He has to lose, because I look at it this way, and I'll bring you in, JB. I look at it like this. This is a big FU to the billionaires. All the money that came in from billionaires to try to stop this, Bill Ackman is going to be mad as fuck. Bill Ackman, Oh my God. Go ahead, JB.
I can't believe I lost. But it's kind of funny. On my show earlier today, I did a poll, and the 4 choices were Mamdani would win in a landslide, Cuomo would win in a landslide, Mamdani would win by a small margin, and then Cuomo would win by a small margin. I myself predicted that he would win around 10 percentage points, between 8 and 10 percentage points. And so it's exactly what I thought was going to happen. And so I was like, you know what? Because here's the thing. To Miss Imani's point, right? He had to do all that work. And you also had to realize that he was a relatively unknown until this point. Now, let's go, 4 years later, right? If Zoran Mamdani is running for re-election, now there's a few key factors that would have to play into that. Like, was he able to fulfill some of his campaign promises? How are New Yorkers, especially those who are working class and working poor New Yorkers, how would they fare compared to today? And also, for people like Zoran Mamdani, would his policies translate to something that people view positively? And if so, then that means he'll have more name recognition. And so in 4 years, will he clean up on another election? And so that only depends on how he does for the next 4 years. So really, game is on. But the thing is like, that's what I'm curious about, is how is he going to do 4 years from now? So by the time we hit 2029, it's whoever's guess. But one thing I said, and I wanted to make sure I make this abundantly clear, is that if you are on the left, no matter if you voted for Zoran Mamdani or not, you need to stay on his ass. Because like, for instance, any politician, you have to do that. But especially for somebody that claims to be on the same side as you, you need to hold his feet to the fire even more than you would anybody else. Because guess what? If Mamdani, if he falters, which I have a feeling he will, this is going to give people who are the Democrats go, well, see what happens when we go too far to the left? See, this is how it happens. And now we got to go further to the right. And then they will ratchet up the ratchet effect even more. So I'm just saying, if you're really on the left, if you live in New York, you need to hold his feet to the fire. You need to turn that heat up.
Well, really good point there, JB. Right. Like, don't get comfortable and complacent now. Like, don't just say, okay, it happened. Now I can just go back to brunch. Don't do that. Like, still, be on him and pay attention to what he's doing too, because he's still a politician. Imani, I know you wanted to add something as well.
Yeah. So I would add, not only if Eric Adams dropped out, but if also Sliwa dropped out, and also if Cuomo was a better candidate, again, this would be a lot tighter. And I don't say that again to be discouraging, but I do say that to say I completely agree with JB that, next time around, Zoran is really going to have to make sure that he keeps up with his base and proves to the other people who were on the Cuomo side or the Sliwa side or the other side that actually all the things I was promising ended up being good. And bringing them over. It's really going to be up to him to stay on that. And it's going to be hard because I anticipate that the party is going to make it hard as hell for the moderates, that is, are going to make it very, very hard, try and block him at every road. But he's going to have to do that. I also am very interested in seeing the demographic breakdown as well, both by age and by race, because if folks remember back during the primaries, there was a lot of hoopla about, these Black conservative voters, they're going to ruin it for Zoran. They're going to ruin it for Zoran. And then the numbers came out, and young Black voters were the ones that pulled him over the line. They came out and went hard for him, young Black voters. And so I am wondering I'm guessing, my guess is, I haven't seen the numbers obviously yet, but my guess is younger Black voters broke for Zoran. Older Black voters broke for Cuomo is my guess. And what this tells me is that if DSA would do a better job of actually interacting, and the left generally would do a better job of actually interacting with all Black voters of all ages, they could have a sweep. They could bring black voters, but they keep throwing up their hands and saying, "Oh, you're all conservative." And then the numbers come back, and it's like not really. So that's also another factor here is the left in the beginning really wrote off black voters, and Cuomo's team did not. The moderates actually never write off black voters in the sense of trying to drive them out. They definitely write them off as far as delivering for them, but like as far as trying to drive them to the polls, they never count them out. And that's a place that the left really needs to pick it up on, because these numbers probably would look a little bit better for Zoran if they had picked it up in that area.
And I think this is national. This is across the board, because I don't see them go into black neighborhoods here either. Like same thing here in Massachusetts. They're not going into the black neighborhoods. And that is a problem. And the moderates are, they are. So I think that is something that we've talked about this before as well. I know JB and I have talked about this before. This is an issue that they have seemed to have had for quite some time. They're not going into the black communities. I didn't know if you were going to go, JB, but I want to bring in Jose here. Oh. I think Eric, for those wondering, we're waiting for Cuomo right here.
We're on the Cuomo watch.
We're just waiting for him to take the stage.
So yes, I live in a predominantly black, working poor area in Orlando. And so I do not get knocks on my door from the Democrats. I sure as hell don't get knocks on my door from the Republicans. And Orlando is a liberal city. It is a blue city, and Florida's a red state, but really it's more of a purple state. And so, yeah, we don't get them here because a lot of black folks, we realize that it's like, because I played a conversation between Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy 33 years ago, and everything that they said is pretty much could be said today. And Eddie Murphy was like, what's the point of voting for anybody? And he was talking about the race between Ross Perot, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. And he said, they're not working for any of us at all anyway, so what's the point of voting? And so a lot of black people feel this way. And so they're not going to actually push for either party because they're like, well, it's all, for the wealthy and the rich anyway. So why are we going to even bother? And so then these parties, they know this. And so they feel like going to the black areas really is a fool's errand. So they're not going to even come to us in the first place. And the problem is that, since we, feel this way, they don't give us a reason to actually vote for something. They always say, oh, we're the lesser evil of insert this radical right-wing Republican that is in there, right? Whether it was a Romney or whether it was a McCain or now it's a Trump. And then next time it may be a DeSantis or Donaldson. Who knows what, but this is one of the reasons why they always stay out of the area. Plus, they really don't feed because they know that we want tangibles. And so they're gonna only go according to, see, we got a black person here. They look just like you. And it's like, no, that's not enough. It's not enough just to have somebody that looks like me. You need to give me something that we need tangibly to be able to hold in our hands. And they're not willing to do it.
Plus, some voters, like I know I've said this before with some of the older black voters, they feel like if something's too good to be true, they're not going to go out and try to vote for it because they're like, yeah, I keep hearing people said this when Bernie was running. Like people told me, they're like, I keep hearing free this, free that. It just all sounds too good to be true. So they supported Biden. They were more willing to support him. So I think that's part of it.
I'd also add that's 100% true because I heard the exact same thing, Sabby, the exact same thing. And I will also say, though, during Bernie's campaign, they didn't have the best outreach, at least in 2020. 2016 was a little bit different, but in 2020, they also did not have the best black outreach either. And that's the problem. Like, yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to campaigning. If you don't talk to folks, you don't communicate with them, they're not going to, be endeared to you. That it's just kind of like, campaigning 101. You got to talk to people. And so, I do think the left needs to do the left could do so much better if they would actually invest the time, the effort, and the money into actually communicating with Black voters. And it's a fairly easy group to get. I mean, there's a lot of just chatter about Black people being conservative, but if you actually look at the breakdown, like racial breakdowns on issues, Black people consistently pull way more to the left than Latinos and white folks, consistently. Non-Black Latinos and white folks, I should say. So they're a group that can be moved. They're already right there. It's just these myths about Black folks that I have a lot of theories about where they come from, but just these myths. And people aren't doing the outreach the way they are to other groups. And it could really be a game changer for the left.
Well, I think that's a really good point there, Amani. Can we see what the poll said? Eric, I'm just curious how people voted on that that poll.
You mean in our poll? All right.
Yeah, in our poll. Just curious.
See if I can maneuver that around here. We got to shift things a little bit there. I think if I do that, there we go.
Okay. Who do you believe will win the NYC mayor race? 1,139 votes. Everybody didn't vote. I don't know why everybody didn't want to vote. 4% said Andrew Cuomo, 82% said Zoran, 2% said Curtis Sliwa, and 12% don't know anything could happen.
See, our audience, wicked smart.
And this is why it's one of those things where we said that at the end of the day, Cuomo has to be destroyed. Like it couldn't just be, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, you get where I'm coming, Jose, you get where I'm coming from? Like it couldn't be like 2% difference or something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I know what you're saying. Also, this is gonna be my last comment because I gotta rest up. I got a big day tomorrow, and these yeah, exactly. Me too. What you just did there has been me. Absolutely, Andrew Cuomo needed to be destroyed, which is why this whole time. Well, first of all, to JB's point about like whether you voted for Mamdani or not, now's the time to hold his feet to the fire. Absolutely. I mean, I voted for Mamdani, and I wasn't like gun ho about the guy. My fear is that he was just going to be another AOC, and we did see elements of this where he's backtracking on a lot on what he was saying, but then. The Bush era racism's coming in. And I'm like, well, what the hell? It's like, well, then I kind of feel like I got to come to his side, because it's like, come on, you can't just start jumping on him like that. So, I voted for him, but that doesn't mean I'm like a sycophant. Now that means like I'm going to make sure that he does what he says he's going to do. And I'm going to call him out in the same way I've done it before. I'll do it to him too. I think this is the death blow to Cuomo. I really do think so. I think that a lot of people are going to blame Sliwa for this. I think Cuomo should have dropped out, not Sliwa. Just me personally. And I think this goes to show you that people power can beat out money, but it's just a lot of work. You do have to be everywhere. That is the one thing I just want to emphasize. We had an event on Sunday where we brought 70 people out into this boxing gym. It was a campaign event. I brought Tony and Josie, and it was implicitly an intervention on the mayoral race too, because we're talking about, well, what are people supposed to do? Do people go out and vote? Does voting actually work? What are people supposed to do? And the conclusion was citizenry doesn't begin or end at the ballot box. Voting is only a part of being a citizen. You have to organize all the time. You have to go to meetings. You have to go to town hall. You have to be involved at every single level. So if people want to get involved in that, they go to votevega.nyc. Okay, that's my only shout out. I got to do that as a congressional candidate, and I have to get going. But I want to thank you, Sabby, and everyone else on this panel for your insight and for having me on here and letting me talk. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. And if anybody else needs to dip out too, I understand. I know I didn't tell everybody how long I got to stay. It's just as come and go as you can. But thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
This is Miki Cheryl. We can put her on. They didn't bring Cuomo on yet. But this is Miki Cheryl.
So I'm going to continue to listen and work with you to move our state forward, because I have learned so much as I've traveled our state. Our innovations, our businesses, our inventors and entrepreneurs have amazed me, but it's the people that have left the biggest mark, especially those who are fighting for prosperity for their entire communities. I was moved during my block walk in Trenton with Shanique as she spoke so passionately about the promise of her city and her neighbors despite the challenges. I love the group of young men from Monroe who've been hard at work on this campaign. They want a seat at the table and they're ready to fight for their future. The little girls who come up to me to say that they're going to be a governor or they're going to be a president.
This woman seems so like chill, Imani. Like she seems a lot more laid back than I pictured.
I guess. Well, first of all, I think she was the wrong pick for New Jersey. Again, I want to see these final numbers. Maybe she did pull it out better than I expected, but I genuinely am shocked that she pulled this out. Just because, number one, pretty boring candidate. Like there's nothing really to write home about. And then secondly, Mikey Sherrill, during redistricting, she didn't live in her own district and she tried to gut the Black vote. And basically they tried to redistrict it around her so she didn't have to move into her own congressional district, and it would have stripped the Black voters that they put into where she was, would have stripped their voting power from somewhere around like 53% to like 9%. Right. So she's not that great with Black votes. She didn't have a Black staffer until she started getting complaints about that. And that was way past her. That was way into her, I believe, her second term in Congress. Right. Like I really don't see that there is much there. Again, I want to see what these exit polls look like. I want to see what the final numbers are, because she's done way better than I expected. And I'm wondering, I did see that independents broke for her. So that may be a big thing. And I'm interested to see where Black voters broke for her. The thing I am not looking forward to, though, is, again, we're gonna see a tale of two races here, where people are gonna say even though Mamdani won, people are gonna say there's no way that's the future of the Democratic Party, and then and then Cheryl won, they're gonna say this is 100% the future of the Democratic Party. And it's like, and it's just, I think we need to be careful about saying what these off-year elections mean for anything. I think we've talked enough about the Mamdani and what he has to do with Black voters and how this could go. This could have gone a different way, different person. That's one thing. I want to see the final numbers for Mikey Sherrill and Jack. And, I wonder if there's a couple of things about Republicans that I noticed this time around. One, they were ratcheting up all the nonsense. And like the thing that's interesting about Trump Republicans or people who vote for Trump, they like him when he's mostly silent, but they don't like him when he does a little bit too much. So I think like all the ICE raids turned a lot of independents off who might have otherwise went for Trump. I think like all the Nazi stuff probably turned independents off, because people like racism, but they just like it to be smooth. They like it to be a little bit hush hush, like it's a little bit on the low. But when the racism gets a little bit too loud, they're like, oh, now I got to distance myself from that. So I'm wondering if that hurt Jack, right? All the Charlie Kirk stuff, the Nazi stuff, the ICE raids, all of that, if that hurt him, and if Trump was a little bit more subdued, if that would have boosted Jack more, or if it's just, are there more New York voters that have moved to Jersey? Is it that the Black voters actually did get out and vote for her despite her record on Black voting? So I'm really interested to see what these final numbers are before I'm ready to say anything. And I'm for sure not ready to make any predictions about 2026 because, and sorry, I was about to forget to say this, but one thing I notice is the Republican campaign ecosystem has been a lot more quiet during these midterms. And what do I mean by that? When you look at presidential years, when Trump is doing everything, all the conservative YouTubers are going ham. They are all the podcasts, all the YouTubers, all the influencers are going crazy, pushing Republican messaging, pushing Trump, pushing conservatism, push. That's how Trump actually ended up winning so much young white males in 2024, was through that ecosystem. Now this ecosystem has been eerily quiet, I've noticed. And I wonder why that is. And I also wonder if they would have been louder, would this have been a different ecosystem? So a lot to unpack once we get these final numbers and view everything.
These are a lot of good things to think about. Roger, JB, I'm going to open it up to you guys as well, because what I'm thinking about is, oh, we have another one here. Yeah.
And that means we had 88% of the precincts reported.
Now, I'm going to drop the beat now. I hope nobody minds. But this is something that I do on the show. I just want to drop the beat because I don't know if Cuomo is gonna if he's gonna do this concession yet. I might just have to record that concession part in the morning. But can I drop the beat? Is that okay for everybody? Okay. So we're dropping the pressure beat. I think I'll do pressure, because this is what I was saying. Like, it needed to be some type of a blow. Like, it could not be 2%. But I'm just happy that Andrew Cuomo lost. Like, that's all I care about. I'm so happy he lost, because I feel like this is a FU to Zionism. I feel like it's a FU to Israel. It's a FU to Bill Ackman and Pac-Man and all of those bros. I just feel like this is a big FU. So I'm going to do the pressure beat drop.
Let's see how you do under pressure. Let's see how you do under pressure. Give them a name to remember. Hey, let's see how you do under pressure. Let's see how you do under pressure. A moment can live on forever.
A moment can live on forever. Forever.
Put a fork
That is,
in him.
courtesy of Nick Caution. Thank you, Huey. Courtesy of Nick Caution. Awesome. I'm sorry, you guys, but this shit is hilarious as hell. Like, seriously, like, when he's going to do it at some point tonight. When Andrew Cuomo does his concession speech at some point tonight, I might get up early tomorrow morning and just record a response to his speech just so I can laugh. This guy is going to be driven out of New York City. You guys understand? Remember, he said that he would move to Florida. I guess he's going to be moving to Florida because
No. Don't come here. Do not come here. Stay your ass in New York, please. God, don't do that.
I'm
JB
sorry.
don't want
JB.
to.
I'm sorry. But I just feel like this is like, you guys know what I'm saying? Like, this is egg on your face. This is embarrassing. And this shows again, like, it's a big FU to Zionism. It really is. Hakeem Jeffries, everybody who was just like, no, well, people need to back Andrew Cuomo. Like, this was terrible. He lost the Democratic primary, and then he ran as an independent and he lost again. I'll pass it to you, Roger. I see the silent laughs, but it's just again.
Yeah, that was that was funny. I'd rather hear a concession speech from the Cuomo impersonator. So that's one. I'm not interested in hearing Andrew Cuomo no more. Enough of him. Let me tell you just how much of a miserable SOB this guy is, okay? Because I had high hopes for him in 2014. Matter of fact, I've been trying to get that footage. There was the general election debate. It was like, I don't know, maybe like 6-8 people on that stage. When Cuomo was running the first time, it was Charles Barron. It was he was the only one that was really challenging him, like up in his face type of thing. Cuomo, some woman who wants to make weed legal. It was Jimmy McMillan, the rent is too damn high guy. And it was some other guy. I forgot what it was, but I see there is an opportunity for Zoran to use leverage to get something out of Governor Hochul. Governor Hochul is so bad that, I know I was going to talk about Cuomo, but Governor Hochul is so bad that her own lieutenant governor is primarying her. I've never seen anything like that before. Congressman Antonio Delgado. I was just like, now some people I know who are still Democrats, they got him on board for the New York Health Act. So I was looking at, okay, next year is a gubernatorial election. There's 36 gubernatorial races across the country. I was like, listen, this is an opportunity where Zoran, remember, he's a state assemblyman, lower chamber of the New York State Legislature. He's a co-sponsor. Oh, by the way, I sent you some stuff that he sponsored in the chat. But he was co-sponsored the New York Health Act, the New York Public Banking Act, so on and so forth. You play that pressure song. Let's see how Hochul does under pressure, because she's feeling the squeeze now. We talk about how, like you said this before, about, well, Larry had said it and told us or whatever. The New York City mayor is the least powerful mayor in the entire country, but the New York governor is the most powerful governor in the entire country, for the simple fact that they have the power of the purse lies in our state with the executive branch, not with the legislative branch, with the executive budget. So the governor can put anything they want into that budget, and the legislature could put anything they want to the budget. Problem is, he could line item veto out of the budget what they put in, but they can't do the same thing with him. Well, with the governor, which is a she now, with the governor. Okay, so the governor can, maybe not kick out, but maybe change around their legislation or whatever the case is. So they're just made to either vote the whole budget up or vote the whole budget down. And most of the time they voted up because there's some, they call the budget the big ugly, because there's some things in there that the legislatures know that will never make it to the floor. And if it does make it to the floor, will it make it to the floor in the other chamber? That if they, it's an omnibus bill, and they know that's the only way they're going to get what they want passed. Okay. So look, Zoran is a sponsor of the New York Public Banking Act, which would allow municipalities to charter their own public banks across the state. He's a sponsor of the New York Health Act. And Hochul, when she lost against Lee Zeldin, 53-47, I can't remember the last Democrat governor in New York State that got in the 50s. It was always in the 60s or maybe even higher. Okay. So this is an opportunity to use pressure on her to be like, hey, listen, Zoran, tell them to put the New York Public Banking Act in there, the New York Health Act in there, so on and so forth. So I see an opportunity there. He could also put pressure on her to rescind Cuomo's anti-BDS executive order that he passed back in 2017 or 2018 or whatever the case is. If, because like you said, the primary is coming up in June. Okay. So, they say, Antonio Delgado, they say he's to the left or whatever, but I see him kind of dance around. But I don't know, the people I know who are still Democrats said, yeah, they got him or whatever. Right. So he could put pressure on her for that before the primaries come up. So I see something there. Now getting to Cuomo, we have been number one in income inequality for damn near 2 freaking decades, 18 years. Out of that 18 years, Cuomo was in the chair for 10 years, for an entire decade. Okay, so all of this stuff, all the rent's too damn high and all that different type of stuff, everything that's happening, it's all his fault. Okay. If anybody doesn't know what he did in New York State, there was a, what do you call that thing? It was always split. The Democrats for years, for decades, since the 60s, had always had a veto-proof majority in the assembly, while the Republicans always had the majority in the New York State Senate. Okay. it wasn't until from the 60s all the way up till Barack Obama's first election. Democrats take over the Senate, but then they start doing a whole bunch of corrupt stuff and they get arrested. So then Cuomo comes in 2010 and he's like, all right, what he did was he formed this thing called the Independent Democrat Conference. Well, so he got a bunch of the Democrats had the majority in the Senate, but he took 8 of them. He said, you guys are going to caucus with Republicans and I'm going to give you some perks. And I need to use you as my scapegoat to why I can't get progressive legislation done. Okay. And every time we'd be like, hey, New York Health Act, you know, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's the Independent Democrat Conference. I can't do anything. They're independent. I can't do anything. That was until Cynthia Nixon ran against him and pretty much opened, you know, like told everybody what he did. Then he ended the Independent Democrat Conference. And 6 of those 8 senators got primaried in 2018 because they came in with the AOC rush. Okay, one of them was just Senator Ramos, right? So then, he was the Moreland Commission. He formed because I was telling you about how those Democrat senators had went to prison. He formed this thing called the Moreland Commission, and he's just like, hey, these guys are independent. They could, you know what I'm saying? They are so independent they could even investigate me. And he kept saying that, and he kept saying that. And he kept saying that. Then they said, you know, we heard some stuff about you, Governor. Then he ended it. Like Brim. Then he made up some excuse why he ended it, some BS excuse or whatever the case is, right? But when I would go up to Albany, that's our state capital. When I would go up to Albany, matter of fact, when I first met Ma'am Donnie in Albany, I don't know, I was doing some protests, I don't know, climate change, environment, New York Health Act, whatever.
Just want to make sure, Roger, don't forget there's the other people on the channel too. Yeah, you want to keep it short and concise.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So you know, so I had I forgot what I was gonna say. But yeah, like he was always you know, like he was just always corrupt pretty much. You know, he was always that's right. I was talking to some legislators and they would tell me that he's a bully. Like if we don't do this or we don't do these,
who's a bully?
They were like,
who are you talking about?
The legislators were saying that Cuomo, when he was governor, was a bully, and he would take like revenge on them if like they did pretty much kind of like what Trump does with the Republicans. He was doing that before Trump. You see? Well,
yeah. One more question I have for everybody before everybody heads out is, in this particular race, there wasn't a third party candidate. There wasn't a Green Party candidate. There wasn't you know what I mean? So it was like people's choices were Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Lewa, or Zoran Mondani, right? This is one of those that's all you got. And I knew Green Party members in New York that voted for Zoran because there was no Green Party candidate. How do people feel about that? The fact that there just wasn't, because I feel like for me, and I'll pivot to you, JB, and then Amani. For me, I kind of feel like this was a mistake of the third parties for not having that person right there in the race, right? Because people are like, well, you got Green Party members voting for a Democrat, but there was no Green Party member that was on the ballot. So if someone is running, this is where the situation where I feel like we need to start asking this question. When it is races that are local races, and it's the difference between you getting an increase in your rent or not getting an increase in rent, you possibly getting a free bus, and there's no third party candidate. You see what I'm saying? Like I go to you, JB. You see what I mean? Like I have my issues with the Democratic Party. We all know. I got my issues with the Republican Party, but the point is, what do you do in this situation? If you're one of those people that can't afford your rent to continue to increase, do you just sit this all out? You see what I mean? JB.
Yeah, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because if you're somebody on the left and you care about, like, for instance, with foreign policy, Zoran Mamdani, he really does not have any influence on foreign policy on a major scale. I mean, yes, being mayor of, one of the richest cities and one of the richest states and one of the most populous cities in the country that does have pool. But at the same time, he does not have the foreign policy. He can't determine foreign policy directly. But at the same time, this is a kind of a stain on the third parties. And I also am looking at not just the Green Party, but I'm also looking at PSL. You guys have you guys literally have somebody running for Congress in the Bronx against Richie Torres and Jose Vega under PSL, but you couldn't put up a candidate to go for mayor's race against Zohran Mamdani to pull Zohran Mamdani even further to the left than what he does. Because it's like I said earlier today. Yeah, free buses, that's cute. That's cute. But most New Yorkers actually use the subway. So why aren't we trying to make the subway either cheaper or free for New Yorkers so that it actually helps more New Yorkers, especially the working class and working poor New Yorkers within the area? And so it's like, it kind of feels like they kind of like relax on their laurels. They're like, okay, well, he's that far left within the Democratic Party, so we'll just take a back seat. And it's like, wait, what? What are you guys doing?
I'll just add this part. It's because it's easier to do free buses than it is to do free subways. Because we had the free buses here in Boston during the pandemic. And I think, if I'm correct, I think New York had free buses in Boston during the pandemic too. Or it had free buses during the pandemic as well. But it's easier to do the buses than it is to do the subway.
Yeah. Well, and I take that. And we have free buses here in Orlando. We call them the limo, the LYMMO limos that they go around just downtown Orlando. The thing is the budget for New York City is much bigger than one like Orlando. And maybe this is the radical in me coming out. But I mean, you can cut some funding from the NYPD so that you can have better public transportation so that people either can save a little bit more money or they don't have to, or they can have free, subway, right? Because here's the thing. Just cut the police out of having to watch fare evasion. How much money would that save? Would it be negligible? Maybe. I don't know exactly all the numbers, but I mean, all you have to do is tax the people in Manhattan just a little bit more, and you'd probably be able to pay for it, along with taking the money that would mean for police. Not only that, but the
billionaires seem to have a lot of money, right, JB?
Well, not only that, but how much money is it to take the fares, to issue cards, to watch for fare evaders? How much money is that all costing too? So that all comes out. But what I mean is, it's like somebody who runs in a third party on the left could have actually put pressure, right, on Zohran Mamdani to go, hey, you say you're doing this, I'm gonna do you one better, and go even further and put the pressure. We never have pressure really from the left; it's only from the right, and then that also helps in the ratchet effect. So sometimes I wonder, like, some of these third parties who consider themselves to be on the left, why aren't you trying to reverse the ratchet effect? Because to me, it seems like you only come out when there's somebody who's moderate and to the right, but when somebody is kind of progressive, you don't try to pull them even further. And so it kind of feels, I don't know, it feels a little counterproductive. Maybe I'm wrong.
Interesting. I have to head out in about 5 minutes, but Amani, I wanted to give you a chance as well. I think the free buses is, like I said, like there is a free bus in Baltimore as well. It's called the Charm City Circulator. Like free buses can be done. So guys, don't listen to what corporate media is telling you. I've seen these things done before. Imani, I'm going to bring you in, and then we'll finish out with Roger and Eric if you want to do the show close.
Yeah. So my hot take of the night is that I don't actually think the name of the party matters as much as the infrastructure behind the name. So what do I mean by that? I think if Zoran had run the exact same campaign, right, raised the exact same amount of money, had the exact same ads, but let's say hypothetically he ran as a Green Party candidate, I don't think we'd see much difference in these numbers. I don't think people put as much stock into parties as they do, as the infrastructure behind them is important. And the reason why third parties struggle so much is, one, they don't have the numbers to like actually get the donation numbers up to get those high, fundraising amounts that then pay for a good ground game, then pay for all of those ads, then pay for, good campaign staff, right? Like all of that stuff costs money. And these third parties, a lot of times when I speak to third party folks, they actually they completely wash away like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to knock doors. Yeah, okay. Well, good luck, because your opponents are knocking doors and they're using their money to print out literature to give to people. They're raising money to send mailers to people at their doors. They are raising money to be on people's TVs, to be on people's radios, to be on people's social media in the form of ads. And you're knocking doors. That's it. Okay. A lot of people don't know, in the same time frame, let's say you do a field operation for 3 hours, right? Every door you knock on within that 3 hours, you're only going to knock on it once and have one conversation. In that same amount of time, there could be about 4 ads played per hour on TV, putting your opponent's message out. So people grossly underestimate how important raising money is. And they try to just eschew it like, oh, I'm not going to do it. It's against my beliefs. That's fine. I mean, personally, I don't think Black people in this country should pay taxes. I still pay my taxes. Why? Because I know there's consequences if I don't. That's how people in the third party should view raising money when it comes to campaigns. Yeah, sure. Should we have money in politics? Absolutely not. It's outrageous. Politicians can basically take bribes. But in order to win campaigns, you must raise that amount of money. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to build the infrastructure that you need for this win. So I say all that to say, I actually don't think the name matters as much as what you can pay people to believe about the name.
Interesting. Roger, and then Eric will close us out.
Yeah. My mom was just asking me, what's a socialist? I was like in the middle because she's listening to Sliwa give his speech. I heard rah, 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 rah. I don't know what he was saying. I'm just gonna say this. What's his name? Mamdani should use his leverage to get for us what he wants for the city, get for the entire state what he wants for the city. And let me throw you a curveball. I think if AOC was smart, she would register independent and run for governor. Remember, I told you the executive budget gives the governor the ultimate power to put in the budget whatever that they want. So this would be a chance to put your money where your mouth is. Something to think about, New York Health Act, all that stuff.
That's an interesting point. So you're saying that she should...
Yeah.
She should run for...
Yeah, later for that president and later for that running for Chuck Schumer's seat. You know what I mean? That would put pressure on Hochul to pass these things like, oh my gosh, she's on my tail. I better start passing these things. Okay? But like I said, if she were to win and become the governor, she would have all that stuff. There's no more excuses. All the stuff that you wanted to pass that you say you couldn't pass because you got to work with 434 other people and 100 senators and all that stuff. No, you're the governor now. All the federal policies that you want to get done, you could get it done at state level. Just put it in the executive budget.
AOC's on CNN right now.
Oh, and Mamdani should have been on independent media. He made the only time I saw him on I'm saying he should have been as he was running. He should have came on independent media, whether it's your show, whether it's do this.
He did go on independent media.
Who?
So the first time I saw him was on Bree's show. That
Okay.
that was before he won the primary. I saw him on Bree's show.
Okay, that's
Katie
why.
Halper was actually running an interview with him earlier today. He
Well,
went on with
today, I mean, I meant like running up
in
to
general.
the election. The only time I saw
These Democrats are just players in the game. That's really what.
But
it
I
comes
think
down
he was on other shows, if I remember correctly. It wasn't just Bree's show. I mean, I didn't reach out, like, to be honest. So I can't speak for everybody else, but I didn't reach out.
the only time I saw him on the show was Larry's show like 2 years ago, because that's his assembly person and AOC's his congressperson. But that's about it.
Yeah, New York Varsity said he was on a lot of indie shows. Yeah, because the first time I even heard about him was when he was on Bree's show, and I think she called it something like a socialist running in New York or something like that. That was before he won the primary, but while he was still running for mayor. Yeah.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, he did go on to independent media. I think Blakely also interviewed him as well.
Well, I mean, what was that? Was like yesterday?
Well, I think she had just found out about that. But I mean, like, he did go on to shows. I just didn't reach out. So I don't know if he would have come on here or not.
Okay.
But yeah. But that's it for me, guys. Eric is going to close out the show. Thank you guys, all of you, so much for coming on. I'm going to try to get some rest and get rid of the stuffy nose and everything, man. I've been sneezing and coughing at the same time, man.
We're gonna let Sabby rest. I'm gonna say a few more words and chats and things. If you guys want to stay on, that's fine. Or if you need to drop, that's fine too. And Sabby will say,
"Hi, little sis, Congresswoman Oakley and Anthony Anderson."
all right.
Bye.
Later. How do you get out?
All right. Well, let Sabby get some rest. Yeah, and in answer to this question of like where do we go from here, if you look at the latest, I've been putting it in the chat here, I'll put it in again, the latest 11 Demands Substack. Oh, they left me. All right, that's fine. It's called this is about this race tonight. And it's called it's the fight they want us to have, and the subtitle is or the other problem with Zoran Mandami. Let's go. We got Mandami and Cuomo here in various poses and things. In June, this Substack published an article called "The Problem with Zoran Mandami," describing how his positions were weak compared to the 11 Demands list. Since then, those positions have only gotten weaker. The Mandami-Cuomo election is just the latest example of the types of fights that the corporate establishment wants us to have. Some other examples, things like immigration, the culture wars, gun control, or the latest sex scandal, or even Charlie Kirk. What do all these things have in common? None of them threaten the billionaire-controlled status quo. It's not that these things shouldn't be discussed. They should. But the conversation should always pivot to this. What are our demands and what are the solutions? On the other side, there are the things they don't want us talking about or getting serious about fixing, such as government corruption, wealth inequality, corporate monopolies, ending the wars, censorship. So when it comes to a figure like Mandami, sure, he's much better than a Nepo troll like Andrew Cuomo, but that's always the game, isn't it? They show you the wolf, so you take in the fox. And we have to ask, when push comes to shove, which set of interests will Mandami represent and advance? Will it be the interests of the billionaires or the 99%? How can he work in our interests while being a lifelong member of an implacably corrupt party, the Democratic wing of the Uniparty? And there's another article to check out, on that subject called "Two Sets of Interests." And I would advise people, if they haven't seen that one yet, to check it out. And it gets into the billionaire interests versus our interests. But back to this one, Mandami Mandami getting elected can represent something positive. Sure, it's a weakening of Zionist power, but if it distracts from the struggle for real change, it could be counterproductive. It comes down to this. However much time and energy we're putting into a figure like Zoran Mandami, we should be putting 10 times as much energy into sparking a mass movement based on clear demands, and one that uses tools like direct action, mutual aid, and yes, electoral efforts as well. And, what does that kind of a movement look like? See the 11 Demands strategy for details in 11 Demands Collective. Make MCDS, money corruption demand solutions, a core part of really every conversation. And it's up to us to spark a mass movement based on clear demands, and we all have a role to play. And, that's what I was thinking of tonight when, it's fair and it's correct to complain about, we don't have a third party candidate to vote for, these candidates and leaders aren't doing what we want. But we also need to be talking about what we're doing. And it's up to all of us to talk about how we can make something really new happen. I think MCDS, money corruption demand solutions, is a really good tool for that. It's a framework for understanding how things work, and a real key to it is always that demands part. Have clear demands, and good things will come from there. And that should be the core of any movement we're doing. So that's the readout of that one. And clear this off. And let's see what we got for some of the chats in here. We have we had a few chats built up over the last couple hours or so. Thanks for the super chat. Echo Pup Music, who says, I don't trust Zoran. I feel he will get elected and be a disappointment. He already backtracked on some things. Yep, I feel you there. And Adar says, thanks for the super chat. He says, Sabby, please tell Vega I told him to all people I know here in the South Bronx. I'm sure Jose appreciates that. And I like what Jose Vega is doing and the points that he's making. And thanks for the super chat, Devotion Orange. He says, love to all panelists. Thanks so much. And thanks very much for the super sticker, Aya and Amy A. And we got Joan Miraga, who's been a member for 13 months, who says, I can't wait till we're celebrating Jose's victory too. Yes. And also shout out to Miranda Rios, who's been a member for 9 months. We got a super chat from JJ413, who says pressure. And thanks for this super chat, Ray. We liberals should focus on the best of each campaign and enjoy the moment. Thanks for that one. Let's see what else we got in the queue. And thanks very much, Italian Stallion, for the super chat. Jersey in here, I figured Mickey was winning. She's a horrible big pharma Zionist, but Jack should have been disqualified for his pushing for rapists to get partial custody. Mandami was predictable too, talking about his win. And there was also this chat along the way from a friend of the show, NY Varsity Sports, Jason, who put out there, guys, what if Mandami says in the inauguration that he is flipping independent? He still has a job to do. Now, I think that would be great to see Mandami, really any of these quote unquote progressive Democrats, if there is really such a thing. I think that would be a very exciting and interesting thing if they exited the party, went independent, and started calling out both parties. It's very telling that you never see them do that, or even worse, you only see them do that when it's like a Cuomo or an Eric Adams who are leaving the party to actually make an end run as a quote unquote independent and further represent the billionaire corporate interests. So, in answer to your question, Jason, I think that would be great and that would be really interesting. and you could see a real groundswell over one or more candidates doing that. At any point, they could form a coalition, a voting bloc, and get some real stuff done. And it's just very telling that they don't do that. Another big part of them doing that and connecting to 11 demands and the Substack post I read earlier is that it's also up to us. We need to figure out how to get organized behind clear demands and put pressure on candidates, current ones and future ones, to leave the corrupt uniparty, to call out the corruption, and to be pushing for real change in the interests of the 99%, not the interests of the billionaires. That's the clear thing. I have clear demands, MCDS, and that's going to wrap for us tonight. But I want to thank all our panelists and everyone who did super chats, and of course everyone in the audience for watching. We had a fairly, I'd say a somewhat interesting election night, somewhat predictable. But I guess it could have been worse. Like Sabrina was saying, she had to see Cuomo lose, and she got that wish. So, we can say we did that much tonight. It will be live next, I believe, Thursday at 8. Be the next live show, so watch out for that and our upcoming shows here on the YouTubes. And until then, I think all we can say is have a good night and keep up that fight. Well, thanks. We'll see you all next time.